Hello, 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 everyone. How y'all doing? Hope everyone's having a good day. Sorry about yesterday. I had intended to do a debate review, but I just was dropping two-thirds of my frames. Everything was coming in all choppy. People couldn't really understand me. I thought it was an internet issue, but as it turns out, it was just something with my computer. But that should be sorted out now. We should be all good to go. I'm seeing everything on my end looks like it's coming through clear. You'll have to let me know if that's not the case for you. As usual, we have tea. It was actually kind of funny. Yesterday, I usually make tea right before I go on stream, and it's like to drink while I have on stream and all this stuff. But yesterday, because of the issues, I got caught up with like all the troubleshooting and trying to fix the issues with my computer to get it sorted out, and just completely forgot my tea. So it was kind of funny. I made the tea basically. I even ended up drinking it cold, which was still good, but it's just kind of funny to me of I had the tea, but I didn't do the thing that I have the tea for, so I didn't have the tea. We have chamomile with honey today. Nice soothing tea. I feel like I say that every time. Someone will have to tell me. Make a like compilation if you want. But today, what I wanted to do is actually I've been wanting to do this for like 3 or 4 weeks now, but things have been coming up or others or like I forget or whatever else. Like last week, it was far more pressing and very funny to take a look at that deck from Puppybyte with the unique challenge. I should put the rules for the challenge in the Discord. I guess Puppybyte, if you have issue with that, let me know. But we should like codify the rules. The Puppybyte set-singleton challenge. It was interesting enough where I actually put together my own list for it. I'm not sure that it's finalized, and I could go over it, but I want to do this deck tech today, so we'll do it later. As it turns out, that challenge is much easier if you're playing blue. Just way easier. Now I made the task a lot easier on myself by playing a commander that just cares about casting spells. So it gets more difficult if I have a constraint like the commander wants me to do artifact stuff, for example. Well, suddenly, well, maybe the artifact stuff is a bad example, but maybe I can't play like a snow commander or something like that, or things that need pretty specific cards for the deck to work. So that might have been part of it, but all in all, ended up being easy enough. But today, what I want to do is a deck tech for one of my decks. I kind of want to just get them all done so that I don't have to worry about like, wait, do people know what I'm talking about when I reference my control deck or my mail deck or whatever else? So we'll be doing a deck tech today, and this is my control deck. This is Dakkon Blackblade. Uh, like Mail, this is a deck. I'm gonna ask you not to like look too much at the other cards. Like Mail, this is a deck where I built it a long time ago, and then like took it apart, quit Magic, came back, and you went, you know what? I kind of want to build this again. My original build had some kind of funny stuff going on. I had Proteus Staff, a card that is, I mean, it's kind of a favorite of brewers everywhere. It's 3 mana artifact, 2 and a blue tap. This was also very unique at the time. Artifacts with colored mana costs. Put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal, a creature card. The player puts that card on the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of their library in any order. Activate only its sorcery. This is basically a polymorph stick. That's the idea, is that you can keep polymorphing stuff. But unlike polymorph, puts on the bottom of your deck, so people have often been like, well, especially in Commander, I don't have to put creatures in my deck, but I always have access to one in my Commander. So you can order your library, because it doesn't put them on the bottom in a random order, puts them in any order, because the thought is, well, if you have no creatures, what are you doing? This was in Mirrodin. It was a weird time. Also, it's a lot to activate. It's not like really a problem so much as you can order your library every turn. This is a very slow thing to do, and sure, Commander was a lot slower then, but every so often I'm like, ooh, can we make this work? And it's usually not worth it. I actually thought about putting this into my set-singleton deck for a few reasons, but I ended up not making the cut. Mostly because it's from Mirrodin, and Mirrodin has just so many good cards. So this is Dakkon Blackblade. What's the idea behind this deck? Well, this is a control deck, but there are different kinds of control decks. This is what I call like classic control or traditional control, but it honestly might not even be what control. That might be a misnomer. This is what I remember as like how control tends to look. That is instant speed control. Wraths and counters, clear the board, counter the important spells, and then let the power of your late game stuff wrangle the game for you. Usually through big card advantage spells that most people aren't going to play because you have to be protecting yourself pretty substantially in order to play them. A good example of a card like that is a Cruel Ultimatum. Am I just unable to spell? Is that what happened here? Oh no, I can spell. This used to be part of a standard control deck. After like, I think it was right after Shards. Maybe it was after. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was right after Shards of Alara came out. It didn't need the rest of the block. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, loses 5 life. You return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, gain 5 life, and the cost is blue, blue, black, 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 red, red. This is the kind of card I'm talking about. This is insane amounts of card advantage. I tried to calculate it once, and it's approximately a 9 for 1, maybe a 10 for 1. It depends a little bit on how much of a card you value 5 life at. Gaining 5 life is probably 1 card. Losing an opponent losing 5 life, it's like 1 to 2, right? So it's like a 10 for 1, something like that, if you get full value. But, you have to be able to get here. And how do you get here? Well, with spells that keep the board clear, stop your opponent from killing you, and counter spells. The traditional land go type control. I differentiate this as a kind of control because there are other control play patterns that I've seen pop up more recently. They're probably not as new as they feel to me, but their prevalence and success is kind of new. And that's what I call sorcery speed control. They tended to pop up a lot after the printing of Oko. This card was everywhere. And your control deck was mostly like, I have interactive spells, but often the thing that's happening is I'm controlling how you have to play the game by slamming incredibly important threats. Just haymakers, but not in the like end the game sense as much as an incremental value sense. Oko is the kind of card where you're not going to lose 2 turns after he comes down, but if you can't get him off the table, you are going to lose. It might just take a while because it's a lot of incremental advantage. Something similar is the case with Minskin Boo, which is not banned, unlike Oko. And it's the same kind of idea, where this comes down in a control-y-ish deck, but like you have only a little bit before this thing ends the game. This is a lot quicker than Oko, but it's the same kind of idea. I call it, it's often in like blue soup type decks. Not always. Minskin Boo sometimes is in mid-range or aggro decks. This is a very powerful card that goes in a lot of decks. But you can imagine the deck that tries to like curve Oko into Minskin Boo, backing it up with things like Swords to Plowshares and Counterspell, and be like, well, yeah, that's like kind of a control deck. Especially the way Oko plays, it restricts what your opponent's able to do. But it's not doing what I described as instant speed control, where you're just holding up counter magic. You're not going land go. You want to tap out often at sorcery speed for something powerful. Dakkon is not like that. That's not how I chose to build this deck. This is instant speed control. So who is Dakkon Blackblade? He's a character that is a little interesting, but mostly, I don't know, mostly as a curiosity for me. This is a legend from Legends. They built them different back then, and you can tell once you start reading the card. Like, if you look at the text box, it's kind of weird. Dakkon Blackblade's power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control. That's it. That's the end of the card. The thing that's funny about this is it's very much outside of Esper's color pie. And I also don't get why he does this. You might go, well, maybe he should have been a different color. Except actually, the colors that Dakkon is make a lot of sense for his lore. He is a former planeswalker. Planeswalkers used to be blue. That just was associated, like wizardry and planeswalkers. It usually went into blue. It doesn't have to, but that's how it used to be. Who was a blacksmith and forged the Blackblade that he's holding. Blacksmithing we consider a red part of the red aspect of the pie, but back then it was white. It was like smiths were white creatures that sometimes had pro red, but it was basically like are used to the forge. Even like Burton Forge Tender is a white card. Stone Forge Mystic. A lot of like blacksmithing is in white. Okay, that makes sense. And then black, well, he's a fallen planeswalker and he's like corrupted and all this stuff. I forget who he used the sword to kill. Was it Nicol Bolas? I think it was Nicol Bolas, right? Um, Also, it's very funny to me that his flavor text references three land types, and I think two of them are outside of. Oh, sorry. And one of them is a land type that he doesn't get access to, which is mountains. And there are certainly better Esper commanders, don't get me wrong. Part of this was I just thought he was cool. Part of it was I wanted to build a commander from Legends, especially because my friend had a Jasmine Boreal deck. Those were those were different times. This is Jasmine Boreal. 3 green white 4/5. That's it. The card's over now. We're done. They built them different back then. For better or worse. And so I was like, oh, I want to build something like that. He's a little less of a build around than I think a lot of people expect him to be in my deck when they first see it, and also less than I tend to build. I usually like to build around the commander. He is not the build around in this deck, but he does do some pretty specific things that make him uniquely valuable as a commander as opposed to other ones. That said, you could probably swap out Centriplets and this deck would work fairly similarly. Or like Oloro. You could plug in a large number of Esper commanders instead of him. I just like Dakkon, and he does a couple of things that I like. Oh, as a note, yeah, he's 6 mana, so is a lot of mana for just big meatball vanilla stats. The things he does that are really nice, it's basically the one thing, right? He does one thing. He hits hard, but he can two-shot opponents pretty reliably. Remember, we're just trying to hit land drops, right? We're playing classic control. We want the game to take a long time, and so we'll hit land drops. We'll be drawing cards and making sure that we can play a land every turn. Eventually, he just gets to two-shotting people. That's pretty nice in a control deck that you have access to not a great win condition, but a win condition. And also because we're not super reliant on him being in play, sometimes we can wrath him. We're like wrath a board that he's on and not really worry about it that much. We might not cast him again, and if we do, we'll get the mana. It's fine. He also blocks really well. That's really rare that it comes up because 6 mana blocker is not really where you want to be, but he does block really well when that comes up. Sometimes I'll cast him with the intention of like attacking a few turns from now, or like with the intention of attacking the subsequent turn, but then the board state changes and I actually want a blocker instead. Sometimes. But a lot of times I don't really cast him that much. The other thing he does is he lines up decently well with what ends up being the main win con in this deck. So I guess we'll do things kind of out of order. Let's start with the win cons. And in the win con section, we only have a few here, right? The primary one is Torment of Hailfire. So Torment of Hailfire, X black sorcery. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. This is not a deck that's going to make so much mana that we're going to cast Torment for 30 or something like that. That's not something we're really able to do. Very frequently, the first Torment is not lethal. It might kill one person, usually doesn't. What it does is it sets people back a decent amount or takes a massive chunk out of their life total on a turn that I don't really have to do very much. Usually 1 or 2 people are or have some difficulty dealing with the resolving of this card. I just had the wrong version of here in here as well. I don't have the Planeswalker stamp one. at least one or two people at the table is going to be struggling to keep playing after this resolves. The way Dakkon lines up with this is, you want as much mana as possible with Torment. So even the turn you find it, you're probably not going to cast it. So often I have the leeway to cast Dakkon first, knowing that Torment is coming. And then it becomes an issue of you don't just need to survive the Torment. Often some amount of time people could like go to 3 with 2 cards in hand or something like that, and maybe they can still play or something like that. But with Dakkon in play, he hits so hard that you need to survive with a blocker. Now you could say the same thing for like Sen triplets, just something with 3 power or greater. Oloro is the same way, but it also means that people with a lot of life, or sorry, with not that much life, but like a decent board presence. Yeah, sometimes it works out. Or sorry, I guess they do need to have a decent amount of life. Someone would have a lot of life and a lot of cards. You can't. It's not just do you go to 3. You might have to go to like 11. To survive, or 11 or 12, possibly more, to survive the hit. You basically need to keep a creature. It's not great, but it does synergize with it a little bit. And like, if someone's at 1 million life, they can't just they can't just be like, you know what, I don't need my board, Dakkon could commander damage. It's not great, but it does line up a decent amount with this. It's mostly, remember, we're mostly like, I just like this guy, and we're going to play him. I also, I should have taken it out before I started doing this. I originally had a copy from Chronicles, and when Dominaria was coming out, and Blackblade Reforged was spoiled, everyone was just like, oh, this is definitely a card for Dakkon, even though, no, it's not. He already does this. You don't need him to be bigger. Going from 2-shotting people to 1-shotting people is not really that big a deal. Especially because this card is worthless on the few other creatures in the deck. And there aren't that many, right? But the price of Dakkon was set to shoot up, so I actually got a copy from Legends, and a friend of mine expanded the art on my Chronicles one, so it's kind of cool thing to have. I like having 2 copies on my commander also, I can use one as the indicator of where the command zone is. But we're off topic here. So what are the other win conditions of the deck? Luminarch Ascension. This card is much less of a win con than it looks like, because people are aware of how much they need to deal with this card. Very frequently, this paints a target on my head, then people get rid of it, and then it's not a problem anymore. Especially because with Luminarch Ascension, you can get the counter, it's easier to get the counters if you put it down early, but then you don't have that much mana to sink into it. Especially in this deck, where the majority, we'll get to the mana base in a bit, but the majority of lands make blue, then white, then black, and it's still not that much white. So it's not like I'm going to be pumping out 4 Angels a turn, even if I have 8 mana, which I might not in the early turns, right? So what is this card? 1 and a white enchantment. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if you didn't lose life this turn, you can put a quest counter on it. 1 and a white, make a 4/4 flying angel token, and activate only if it has 4 or more quest counters on it. But this is a win con. Sometimes it wins a game. It is much less reliable than Torment. I forgot to mention with Torment. I said that the first one is rarely lethal. The second one frequently is, and the third one always is. And we have ways of casting it that many times. There was a game where I cast it for like 16, then 6, then 11, or something weird like that. It's the numbers that you cast it at, or like that I cast it at, are also not necessarily consistent. And the last one is Teferi. Also not really a win con. It's never actually done the win con part of this, but theoretically it's possible. The card advantage is the big thing that he does. 3 blue white, 4 loyalty planeswalker, +1, draw a card. At the beginning of the next end step, untap 2 lands. So plus cards, plus mana, cool. We want that. We can protect him well enough. And, once we, it's a big mana investment in the first place, but once he's down, an extra card a turn, an extra 2 mana a turn, very big deal. -3, put target non-land permanent in its owner's library, 3rd from the top. Occasionally I'll use this. I really don't want to. Usually if I do, Teferi's likely to die. I'm okay with Teferi dying sometimes, but obviously we prefer to keep him. So if I can help it, I prefer not to -3, but it's good that it's there. And then the emblem, -8, you get an emblem with draw a card, exile target. Whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent an opponent controls. That has happened once or twice. It's not super common. Okay, so that's the vague game plan. What are we generally doing? Well, we're hitting land drops consistently. So I guess we can go back to the other view. So people play different amounts of lands in whatever. 39 in here. I feel like I even want to play another one sometimes. It'd be hard to find a cut, but I probably should. What I should probably do is take out like Terramorphic Expanse. I think I already cut Evolving Wilds. Yeah, I cut Evolving Wilds. I should probably just take out a Terramorphic Expanse, put in another either another basic or actually I kind of like my basic count. I'll probably just put in another like blue-white land or something like that. But 39 lands, we want to hit our land drops. There are a few utility lands hanging out in here. You have Bojuka Bog, cool. You have some like fetching for fixing, right? Castle Vantress is another utility land. But most of these are mana and just color fixing. The exceptions like Temple of the False God gives us a little bit more mana. As much as the CDH players think this is a trap, we're trying to play a long game. If the game ends before this makes mana, that's a huge issue for us. And we should have some tools to prevent that from happening. It's also not the people I tend to play with. Obviously, we need Reliquary Tower because our hand will get big. Myriad Landscape isn't actually color fixing, unfortunately. It has to get 2 lands of the same basic land type, which is kind of bad. We only have 2 swamps. I don't want to get swamps with it anyway. We only have 3 plains. I occasionally will get plains with it, but so many pips in the deck are blue that you're usually getting double island. But this is one way of accelerating for Dakkon. We do need more mana. It's just, it's low cost in that we have very few tap lands in the deck, and it does accelerate us. And we don't even necessarily need to accelerate quickly. I might play this on turn 1 and then not use it until turn 9 or something. And then Mystic Sanctuary for a little bit of recursion. Otherwise, just mana fixing lands. Okay, so we're hitting land drops. Cool. We're also trying to accelerate our mana. Pretty obvious stuff here. The only things that are really weird are Midnight Clock. One of the things that I hope like the play pattern I want out of the game, but it doesn't always pan out, draws are different, is to play a bunch of mana artifacts, play a big refill, and then play the traditional control. You can't do the traditional control that 1v1 games used to have, where you just sit back, hit your land drops, 1-for-1 your opponent with counter spells, because you have 3 opponents. Counterspell isn't a 1-for-1, it's a 1/3 for 1. So the redraw from Midnight Clock, kind of a big deal. Sometimes it's a little awkward when it happens, and some amount of the time I find that I can pay 3 to put an hour counter on it once before it pops, and putting a counter on it once is actually kind of bad. It's actually a little bit better to just let it happen than to accelerate it by 1 turn. But the draw 7 is really nice. Thematic Compass is a weird one. We saw that in Puppybyte's deck, but in this it's doing something a little bit different. So 2-mana artifact, 3 tap, search your library for basic land, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Very rarely, very occasionally, I will activate this ability. It's nice that it's there, and it is sometimes relevant that it's on the card. It's not what it's here for. What it's here for is, at the beginning of your end step, if you control 7 or more lands, transform Thematic Compass. Usually, I'll activate this in games where I'm keeping up counter magic because I'm worried that my opponent might do something devastating. They don't. And then, oh, well, I have this extra mana. I might as well get a land. And usually activating it at most twice, but that's super rare. It's like once, if ever. But then the backside is a land, and since it doesn't exile itself and transform, it just transforms. So if you use it, the same turn it flips, you don't get to use the land. All right, something to keep in mind. Again, very rarely comes up. Spires of Araska is a land, taps for a colorless, tap, untap target attacking creature and opponent controls, and remove it from combat. Basically Maze of Ith. Cool thing is, unlike Maze of Ith, this makes mana. Unlike Maze of Ith, it doesn't take our land drop. We can just, it's kind of like a rampant growth, right? Or just one of these 2-mana talismans. It doesn't make colored mana, but I cast it for 2 mana. Kind of like a Thought Vessel, I guess. Cast it for 2, and it makes it colorless. Cool. Also, the threat of activation for this saves you way more life than the actual activation. You know, if you have a 5/5, none of your opponents have blockers, and one of your opponents has Spires of Vraska, well, you might as well attack someone else, right? But then the next player might have an attack. Maybe their creature phase back in. Are they, and do they attack me? They attack the Spires of Vraska player, or do they attack someone else? There's another 5/5, and so like that adds up. This card isn't exceptional. I feel like I'm talking it up too much, actually. But it lines up pretty well with the deck. I don't imagine cutting it in the foreseeable future. It's pretty good, and I like it. And then the only other artifact that's hanging out here doing something weird and different, well, top is like obvious stuff. I guess there are a couple of artifacts hanging out here. Sensei's Divining Top. This is not a card I think goes in every deck, but it is good in a control deck, and we have one synergy with it, which we will get to. Elixir of Immortality. I intentionally choose the M11 version because it's the one with the typo. I'll read the card and I'll let you see if you can figure out what the fix needed to be before I tell you. It's 1-mana artifact, 2-tap, you gain 5 life, shuffle Elixir of Immortality and your graveyard into your library. This is a really dorky card, and it's weird that's hanging out here. I used to have issues where I would deck out. I don't know if it's much of a problem anymore, but it used to be pretty real. It's also a little bit of recursion. It's a little bit of life gain. I might not need it anymore, just the way my games have been going, but it used to be pretty important. And it's nice to know that, if you have to discard a certain card or if your card gets milled, that you do have access to that card eventually, which can be important when we have, something like Torment of Hailfire as a win condition. We might need to shuffle it back into our deck to find later, which we can do. And then there's Mind's Eye. This is one of the big draw spells that I was talking about. It doesn't look like a big draw spell because it's not like Sphinx's Revelation where you're paying X and drawing a million cards, but it is a big draw engine. It's just you just get pay 5 for no effect up front, which kind of sucks, in exchange for being able to parcel out when you spend the mana to draw the cards. 5-mana artifact. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1. When you do, draw a card. I guess it's if you do, draw a card. Funny thing I've had come up with this and an opponent having a Rhystic Study is I could pay 1 to not let them draw with the Rhystic Study, or I could not pay 1, let them draw with the Rhystic Study, and then pay that 1 instead to draw a card. So I can pay 1 to either have us both draw a card or neither of us draw a card. Just kind of funny. So here's our acceleration. Then we have the spells that keep us safe. There are a couple of categories of this. There are the sweepers. Almost all of the sorceries are sweepers. I've changed the quantity and type of these over time. You'll notice Damnation's not in here. Sadly, I had too many, and it seems to be the worst one. Maybe Merciless Eviction is worse, but I don't think so for a couple of reasons. So there are 3 of these sweepers are 4 mana. Wrath of God, Supreme Verdict, Damn. We almost never cast Damn, but it's nice that we have that option. Basically another Wrath of God. Double black also is much harder than double white in our deck. Maybe not much harder, but it is harder. So this is an improvement on Damnation just for that. These are also the only ones that destroy. That's pretty important because, well, Regenerate's not that big a deal, especially since Wrath of God and Damn prevent regeneration. But Indestructible is a big thing. Also, like, Graveyard synergy stuff. Like, some creatures people are okay with having in their graveyard or they can get back. So the only reason that these Destroy Wraths are in here is because they're 4 mana. It's we're just sacrificing on power in exchange for mana, right? The rest of them don't destroy. Hallowed Burial, an underplayed card, I think. When people play Wraths, I think most people don't know this card exists. 3 white, put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. This is super good at getting stuff out of the way. Terminus does the same thing, costs an extra mana, but has Miracle. I have 1 tutor in the deck, which is Mystical Tutor. I guess I'll talk about it a little bit out of order. I don't like tutors in general in Commander. I've talked about this before. I think it's kind of antithetical to the goals of the format. You're playing a 100-card singleton. Part of the point should be that you have to either find ways of being redundant or just deal with the cards you get. and sculpture play based on what you have access to. And like, yeah, there are just going to be some cards you just never see in a game. I think that's a really healthy and cool part of the format. Tutors get in the way of this. I'm also really worried because with tutors, very frequently you get the same card. It's just copy number 2 of whatever the thing is. Same thing with like this is why I have a demonic tutor. I just don't have it in the deck. Uh, it's the same reason. I don't want to get the same card every time. I don't want that level of, I guess I want to call it artificial consistency. I feel like you should have to work with what you get. That's kind of the point of a 100-card singleton format. The exception I made is for Mystical Tutor, because I did find that it was getting the same card a lot, but that card is Terminus. And I think it's actually kind of okay for this to be a, like, you're down a card, right? You spend Mystical Tutor and then basically skip a draw step, right? Your next draw step is the Terminus, so tutors like this, you're down a card from where you would be. But you get a cheap Wrath. It can be instant speed because Miracle, by the way, you don't have to draw it on your turn. It's just the first spell you draw on a turn. So Sensei's Defining Top, by the way, this is one of the synergies. If you have Mystical Tutor and Sensei's Defining Top, you can Terminus at instant speed, irrespective of where it is in your deck. So that's pretty cool. And I think if it's getting a Wrath most of the time, I'm okay with it. The other thing it sometimes gets is Torment of Hailfire, but if it's getting Torment of Hailfire, it's just accelerating me finding it. It's not like I couldn't have gotten there otherwise. I'll draw enough cards throughout a game to find Torment. This is just accelerating the process a little bit, and if I'm ready to cast it, it's not like it's not like it's dire. Usually the board is clear. Usually I have a lot of mana, so I don't mind this hanging out here, but it is a little bit like a concession. Same thing with the Soul Ring. Y'all know I don't like Soul Ring, but this deck is trying to be kind of powerful, and so Soul Ring is here. Okay, we talked about the 2 Tuck Rats. Then there's Sunfall 3. This one's new. I haven't gotten to cast it yet, but it has to be good. It's 5 mana and it exiles all creatures. If that was the end of the card, I probably would be okay with it, honestly. But it also has Incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. So you also get like a big creature at some point. You can spend 2 mana to get it when at your leisure. Again, I haven't drawn it, so I don't know how relevant that token is yet. But it's basically free. As I said, like Hollowed Berry, the difference between Hollowed Berry and Sunfall is very, very minor. And I'm as far as putting on the bottom versus exile, and I'm happy with Hollowed Burial, right? It's kind of like tacking on, if you could tack on a creature to the Hollowed Burial. That's just a bonus, so that's cool. And it's only 5 mana, which is nice. I've had previous I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, collections of Wraths in the deck, and I've had 6 mana exile effects. I've had Time Wipe. I've had all sorts of stuff. 5 mana and exile is pretty great. And the exile aspect is why Merciless Eviction is still in here. There are a few versions of this I could play, but this is the one that has the most options. I guess Farewell might be better, but I forget exactly. If I remember right, there was actually something about this that didn't make it better. Okay, exile artifacts. We prefer not to, but sometimes we want to. It's the same on Merciless Eviction. Exile creatures, the same. Exile enchantments, also decently. There's a decent amount of time we don't want this, but it's nice to have. Exile graveyards. That's what it is. Exile all graveyards versus exile all planeswalkers. I don't have that many planeswalkers. I guess not a lot of people do. I use my graveyard. Sometimes other people do. I'm not really sure. This could be Farewell. It'd be about the same. I guess on the subject of Planeswalkers, I might as well cover the other one that I haven't talked about. I'm trying this one out just because it's the namesake, and like maybe it synergizes. I've only played with it once. It was pretty alright. It's Dakkon Shadowslayer. He's like, regained his spark, I guess, or maybe this is back in time. I don't know what the flavor of this card is. White, blue, black, 0 loyalty, but it says it enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters equal to the number of lands you control. So kind of similar to Dakkon. Cares about the Dakkon, the creature, in that, that's the shared axis. He cares about how many lands you have in play. Sometimes you can play it and it already has 10 counters on it. That wasn't the case when I cast it last, but it sometimes will be, sure. This is also why his ultimate ability is kind of weak, is because some amount of the time you can just play him and do it instantly. So what are his abilities? +1, Surveil 2, so let's look at the top 2 cards of your library. You may put any number in your graveyard and the rest back on top in any order. So it's card selection, not card advantage. That said, card selection is nice, and there are a couple of cards I have that care about the graveyard, so it's not that bad. And knowing I have access to Elixir of Immortality means that if I dump stuff in the graveyard, it's not forever. We can get it back as long as we find the Elixir. It's really the only card we have to make sure doesn't get milled. Excuse me. Needed some tea. It's quite good. -3, exile target creature. That's great. Just no notes. Perfect. Obviously, you can't do that if you cast him on... Well, you can do that if you cast him on 3, but, you know, basically he's just a removal spell as opposed to a planeswalker. That actually is fine. And then -6, you may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. Basically irrelevant. I guess sometimes I can put in like Mind's Eye. It's really the only artifact that's worth doing that with. Midnight Clock exiles itself, so I guess I can put it into play from the graveyard if it lands there. Same thing with like some of this other stuff. But for the most part, the ultimate is pretty irrelevant. I don't really care that much. But -3 to exile a creature is great. Just additional spot removal that's card efficient. It's really, really nice. And the card selection, as I say, I'm still trying this out. This might not stay here forever, but for the moment, it's fine. Creatures. We only have 3 of them. We're a control deck. Creatures are not the thing we do. They all do basically the same thing. They're recursion. Snapcaster Mage. Probably the one everyone's familiar with. 1 blue, 2/1 flash. When it enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. Sometimes this is a counterspell, sometimes it's a removal spell, sometimes it's a Wrath, very rarely, but sometimes I'll flashback my Wrath of God or whatever if I need to. Just solid utility. It only costs 2 mana, but this does, by the way, this is what I mean about the blue pips. If I'm casting counterspell with this, that's a play that costs triple blue, and we're a 3-color deck. So this is why I didn't explain very much in the mana base when we were talking about it, but every land that makes more than 1 color makes blue. The only exception is Shattered Sanctum, but this is here because my girlfriend bought me a pack of this set. Happened to open a foil one of these, and I was like, okay, well, it was really nice of you. And I really appreciate, her thinking about me. So I had her sign it, and it's in the deck. But that's the only reason why it's here, is sentimental value. Every other land, if it makes more than 1 color, makes blue. I think the same number make white and black, which we could probably mess with. This Terramorphic Expanse, I think, needs to come out for a blue-white dual land. Also, the other thing is almost all of these have a way of coming in untapped or just never come in tapped. So, like, Deserted Beach and Drowned Catacombs are good examples. This comes in untapped if you play it late. Cool, we're trying to play things late. This comes in untapped if you have an island or a swamp. We have lots of islands. We'll figure that out, Oh, I guess there is one more white source because I have a Tundra, but I don't have an Underground Sea. So there you go. So this is why like the mana base is kind of built this way. Is the vast majority of pips are blue pips. All right. We also have Torrential Gearhulk. This is I've heard this called Fatcaster Mage. It's just a big Snapcaster. It's a little different though. 4 blue, 5/6 flash. So this thing blocks. By the way, some amount of the time, this thing is eating a creature in combat. When it enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant card only, not sorcery. You can only cast instants from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If it would be put in your graveyard this turn, exile instead. So you're paying 6 as opposed to 2, but you don't pay the cost on the instant, which is kind of nice. But you can only cast instant. It is worse than Snapcaster for sure, but it's just more of this effect. A really good thing to do this with, by the way, is Dig Through Time. It doesn't matter that this is 8 mana. You just cast it off of, this just cast it for free. With Snapcaster Mage, you have to pay for it, which, I mean, you can just delve, but, Torrential Gearhulk does some stuff. Often a 6 mana creature that counters the spell. Some amount of the time it does something different, but it's still good. And then Archaeomancer, 2 blue, 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I used to have more of this effect. I used to have Salvager of Secrets. Those were in here. I had more of them. Oh, I used to have Mnemonic Wall. I had more of them at the time because I was playing Time Wipe, a card I should probably bring up. Time Wipe is... Hello. All right, there we go. There's another Wrath effect that I could be playing, but I ended up cutting. It's 2 white, white, blue. Return a creature you control that's under sand, then destroy all creatures. It's not target creature, by the way, so people can't kill the Archaeomancer to counter the spell. But with any of those creatures that returns a spell, an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand, it's effectively a loop, right? You can recast the creature, get back the Wrath, get back the Time Wipe, picking up that creature. You know, you can Wrath every turn if you have the mana for it. That ended up being worse and worse over time. Even when I was doing it, it wasn't that good. A lot of people, like, that's not that big a deal for them anyway. And I'm playing this 5 mana Destroy Wrath that, you know, needs other bad cards in my deck to be good. So I ended up trimming a lot of those. Archaeomancer is still here because it's the cheapest one of them, and I do need to rebuy my Torment of Hailfire. Remember, I said the first one's usually not lethal. The first one gives me clearance to do something like play an Archaeomancer and pass. And then the second one is very frequently game-ending, if not lethal. Sometimes, you know, they survive the Torment, but, you know, they have a creature, 5 life, and no cards. You know, they're going to lose that game. It's just going to be a few more turns. So Archaeomancer's still here. Very unlikely to get cut. I mean, if they print a 3-mana version of this, which I couldn't imagine they would, that's a thing that could come in, I guess. There's one other sweeper that I forgot to mention because it's not in the sorcery category, and that is Cyclonic Rift. You know, not much to explain here. It's another sweeper. It can be spot removal. Not usually, but can be. And then the rest, and so now the rest of my instance is like the bread and butter in the deck. It's 25 of them because we're going to be casting stuff at instant speed as much as we can. As much we want to, as much as possible. Now, I know I could play like Vidalcan Orrery and Leyline of Anticipation to increase my ability to do that. I just didn't really want to. And it's not super necessary. Those cards are dead. They are just blank cards when you play them. You spend 4 mana. I mean, sure, you might start with the Leyline, but usually you don't. Spend 4 mana. It doesn't do anything. You're down a card. And it's only an advantage for spells that you would... like, you know, we have 8 sorceries. Not all of them are worth playing at instant speed anyway. You know, like Torment of Hailfire, it's not that big a deal. And, you know, Terminus, we're trying to Miracle, so it's not a big deal either. Only one of our creatures doesn't have Flash, and then, like, I guess our artifacts are enchantments, but that's really not that big a deal. So we're not playing that stuff. Instead, we're just playing a lot of instants. A lot of it is counter magic, so you can see our counter spells. We have an Offer You Can't Refuse. I think this just went into the deck. I used to have Swan Song. Do I still have Swan Song? I just cut it. I cut it for Offer You Can't Refuse. I've been pretty impressed with this card. When I first saw it, people were talking about it for 60-card formats, like Eternal formats. And 2 mana, if you give an opponent 2 mana, they might just kill you. In those formats, like that's not worth the 1 mana negate. But in Commander, who cares about 2 mana? We're spending so much mana in a game. It's not that big a deal. So Offer You Can't Refuse, just put that in. Arcane Denial, Counterspell, Cryptic Command, Disdainful Stroke. I love this card. Dovin's Veto, Drown of the Lock, also a removal spell. Mana Drain. This is a card that wasn't in the deck until I just happened to be lucky and open the Collector's Boosters. Another gift from my wonderful girlfriend. Mission Briefing. This is just another Snapcaster Mage, but instead of a 2/1, it comes with card selection. Blue, Surveil 2, then choose an instant or sorcery in your graveyard. You may put that, if you may cast it this turn. If it would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. This is another reason, like, if we're trying to cast Counterspell with this, that's 4 blue mana. This is why we need a lot of blue pips. Very frequently a Counterspell, but also a little bit of card selection. Sometimes it's Wrath, you know. This is kind of like the Snapcaster category. More Counterspells. Mystic Confluence also draws us cards, also can bounce creatures if we need to. Narset's Reversal. Only counters certain kinds of spells, right? Blue, copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. This doesn't counter the spell, just returns it to their hand, so they can get it, they can cast it again. Sometimes this is just a tempo thing of like, okay, well, you don't have enough mana to cast it again right now. You can also win counter wars pretty brutally with this. If your opponent tried to counter your spell, and then you counter their spell, and then they counter your spell, you could pick up one of your counters and then cast another copy of the targeting the one your opponent's initial counterspell or whatever. So that's the intended thing. What it actually does most of the time is it protects you from counter spells. What you can do, and I do this sometimes, is cast something like Teferi's Protection or Torment of Hailfire. Then if your opponent tries to interact with it, you, instead of bouncing their interactive spell, you bounce the Torment, or you bounce the Teferi's Protection. Now your copy is above their reaction to it. You have the original back in your hand, so for Teferi's Protection, it's not exiled, which is pretty cool. And, it's basically like you moved your spell up the stack while also recovering the spell to cast later. This is another way we get multiple Torments, is sometimes, usually I don't cast Torment. I don't tap out for Torment most of the time. I keep some amount of mana up to counter potential interaction just in case something goes wrong. This is one of those things, maybe an opponent tries to Teferi's Protection themselves. You can put the Torment on top of the copy the Torment, put on top of the Teferi's Protection if they can cast it again, So very, very good spell. Some number of games, there was one game I had recently where my game plan for a few turns was to rebuy Narset's Reversal with the spells that can do that, and Teferi's Protection myself for like 2 or 3 turns in a row, because you can just do this proactively. You can go cast Teferi's Protection, Narset's Reversal, the Protection, cool. Now you can Archaeomancer Narset's Reversal, which you can't do to Teferi's Protection since it exiles itself. You can keep yourself alive for a long time if you need to. There was, in that game, one opponent had enough damage to kill everyone at the table. I only lived through the Teferi's Protection, and then after killing 2 people trivially, he could not get through to me. Partially because of this loop, partially because of series of wraths, partially because of interaction. Once it's down to 1 player, this deck is much, much better at dealing with stuff, because counterspells, as I mentioned, are inherently card negative in this. We also have Negate. We have Rewind, just because it untaps your lands, which is nice. We have Unlined, same thing. Negates are very strong, and that's the counterspell suite. There used to be more, and sometimes I go back and forth as to how many should be in the deck. This is probably a good number. Maybe it's like 1 or 2 off, either more or less. One of the things that's also really important is that because counterspells are card negative in Commander, usually, it's just like, it's better to save it for something that'll, end the game, or you couldn't deal with otherwise, or saves the table. In fact, I sometimes describe the experience of playing a control deck in Commander as, oh, thanks for saving the table. Now now die because you're going to save the table for me instead. So instead, it's about finding your spot. If you're doing it right, 1 counterspell should feel like 5. Because if you just pick the right thing, if you just, point it in specific, pressure points in your opponent's engine, or your opponent's collection of resources that they have access to, all the rest of it falls apart. They just couldn't cobble anything together. So the counterspells are good for that. We also have some amount of spot removal. We have Void Rend. This is a little bit of a vanilla card, but it does what it needs to do. It does it efficiently, and I don't really have complaints. It's not an amazing card, but it's instant speed removal for any kind of permanent that can't be countered. Cool. That's just a confluence of things that make it worthwhile enough. White black, destroy target non-land permanent. This spell can't be countered. Also have Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, just in case we need cheap ways of getting stuff gone forever and just need to get it off the table. Return to Dust, a card I love, though I guess Heliod's Intervention maybe would be better than this deck. I think I added it to my considering, but I don't remember. No, I need to add it. And then we can add it to the considering. Heliod's Intervention only at 4 mana is worse than is not strictly worse than Return to Dust, but it's close. Return to Dust is basically sorcery exile to artifacts or enchantments. You can cast it at instant speed to only exile 1. You can also cast it instant speed during your main phase and still exile 2. Most of the time, you just don't have a reason to do that. Maybe this should be Heliod's Intervention. People don't have that much recursion for their artifacts and enchantments. But I do love this card, so this is here. And then the other remaining cards are Card Advantage and Selection. Dig through time, we talked about a little bit. We fill our graveyard a decent amount, and there are some cards that care about us filling our graveyard. We already saw a few a few recursion effects like Mission Briefing and Snapcaster Mage. We also have Search for Azcanta in the deck, which I'll get to, so that fills the graveyard. Some of our fetch lands fill the graveyard, so we can weed some of those out to get some card advantage and card selection. Also noteworthy is because we have... Oh, hey, Puppybyte. Because we have Elixir of Immortality, we can also selectively remove stuff that we don't want to draw again. The fetch lands are nice the first time. I don't need to draw that many lands at the point where I'm, casting big draw spells and recouping my deck. Speaking of big draw spells, we have a few of those. We have Blue Sun Zenith. X, blue, blue, blue. Target player draws X cards. Shuffle Blue Sun Zenith into its owner's library, and it's an instant. This is only slightly better than, Stroke of Genius? Stroke of Genius is X, 2 and a blue. But the shuffles back in. All right, fine. Usually you have to pay X and 3 for instant speed draw X. It's not the best version of that in the deck, but there are only so many good ones. So here we are. There's also Pull from Tomorrow. X blue blue, draw X cards, then discard a card. Very, very similar to the same cost. If you pay the same amount of into it as you do the Blue Sun Zenith, say you pay 5, you end up with the same number of cards in your hand. You draw 2 from the Blue Sun Zenith. You draw 3, discard 1 with Pull from Tomorrow. So it's very, very similar. But also a little bit of selection that we pay less and exchange the card advantage for a little bit of selection. Still fine. And then Sphinx's Revelation, X white blue blue, gain X life, draw X cards. This is the best version of this in the deck, just because it comes with the life gain. I've mentioned before that you want to have some way of shoring up your life total in a deck, but not if it comes at too great a cost. So we have Elixir of Immortality, and we have this. And that's usually good enough in combination with our normal suite of stuff that protects us and Teferi's protection. And in a pinch, I don't think it's come up before, but I've paid attention that I could do it. We can source the Plowshare's Dakkon. He's enormous. If we cast him with the intention of doing something, our opponent tries to remove him and we need the life, we can just gain 14 or whatever. So those are the instants. And then we have... Wait, do I not have the... I forget if I fixed this. I looked through this deck recently and I realized there were a couple of problems with it. I realized I don't have Arcane Signet, so I have to put in there. What are you going to cut for Everybody Lives? I don't think I'll be playing Everybody Lives. I already don't have Angel's Grace. I don't think that card is particularly good for what I'm doing. The difference with Teferi's protection is it protects my stuff and my life total, whereas Everybody Lives, I guess, protects my stuff somewhat, not holistically, but a decent amount, but doesn't protect my life total. Maybe it should go in here, but I don't think that's good, honestly. I do need to put Arcane Signet in here. I didn't realize, just because when you don't have a deck list, it's very easy to have oversights like that. I have to find a spot for it. I'm not exactly sure what comes out at the moment, but we'll find something. All right, and then we have the enchantments. Future Sight, much like Mind's Eye, this is a big draw spell. It just doesn't look like it. 2 blue 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 enchantment. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. This means you can play lands off the top, which is cool, but you can also cast spells, and some number of people... And by the way, it's another threat of activation thing. If you flip counterspell, so often people do not want to be the first one to run into that counterspell. They just know if they cast something impactful, it's going to eat the counterspell. So nobody does anything of importance, and you just draw your counterspell, and now what? Everybody is more like Heroic Intervention than Angel's Grace. I guess that's true. I don't know how much I care about Heroic Intervention, though. I don't know if I'd play Heroic Intervention in this deck. I have permanents, but not that many. Most of the ones I care about are my mana rocks, so that is nice to be able to protect them, but I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it, but I don't think so. I'm leaning towards maybe not. Grasp of Fate, this is efficient removal. 1 white, enters the battlefield for each opponent. Exile to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until this leaves the battlefield. So Banishing Light for each opponent. Cool, great. It's efficient removal. It's exile. There's a little bit of risk of if this gets blown up, they get it back. But, you can't have everything, right? In Prison of the Moon, this is a card that I go back and forth on. It's pretty brutal when it happens, and sometimes I feel bad about it. But people should have enchantment removal. I don't know. 2 and a blue, Enchantment aura. Enchant creature, land, or planeswalker. Notably, this cannot enchant artifacts or enchantments. Oh my god, has that been a problem for me so many times. Another reason why maybe this doesn't need to be here anymore. But enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap at a colorless to your mana pool, and it loses all other card types and abilities. That's why it says enchant land, by the way. It's so that it can keep enchanting the thing once it turns into a waste. It basically just turns into wastes. Uh, this is pretty brutal to do to someone's commander if their deck is built around it, because they have to figure out how to get rid of the enchantment. It's not just they can recast their commander. It's effectively, effectively removed from the remove from game zone, like the version of erase, or is it AWOL? I don't remember. But it's completely inaccessible until this is removed. So that's why this is here. Ristic Study, just good card draw. People don't pay into this enough. Smothering Tithe is similar, just good mana. It's a little expensive. We'll see how this works out. This is a recent re-inclusion. There was a little while where I convinced my friend group to ban Sol Ring just between us. And once we had done that, people were saying we should cut Smothering Tithe as well. I didn't argue with them. It just didn't come from me. I'm not saying I was opposed. It was just not my suggestion. So I'm putting this back in since I don't play with them anymore. So we'll see how well this turns out, but it's probably good. The big problem I have with Smothering Tithe is that it's 2 mana to prevent the treasure token, which is 1 mana. It just feels overcosted. That's the real, a lot of times people don't pay into it just because 2 mana to deny you 1 mana just feels so much worse. This should it'd probably be okay if it just said unless they pay 1. Maybe it could be 3 mana at that point. I don't know. I probably shouldn't be trying to fix the card, but then some amount of the time people just don't pay into it at all. And sometimes they're drawing a ton of cards, and you're just like, all right, well, I'll run away with the game. The last time I played with this card, that's more or less what happened. Is I cast it. There was one player who's like, I'm never paying into it. Also, I'm just gonna draw 15 cards in my turn, and now the control deck has the mana to counter my important spells and do whatever the hell else they want. That game was trivial. It was not close to being close. And then lastly, we have Search for Azcanta. Starts as card selection, ends up being card advantage, and also, like Thematic Compass, it gets us more lands. It is acceleration, which can matter a little bit for Dakkon, but more importantly, we just need to be able to have mana to cast our spells. 1 in a blue, at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Surveil 1. I don't know if it's been reworded, but it's Surveil 1. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform Search for Azcanta. Backside, Azcanta, the Sunken Ruin. Legendary land, taps for a blue. That it taps for a blue is so nice. Oh, it's so nice. You might say that's obvious, but I don't know. Thematic Compass taps for a colorless. There's why couldn't this tap for a colorless as well? It's just nice that it taps for blue. 2 in a blue, tap. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it to your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Extra thing that's cool about this, on top of the normal card selection, card advantage, whatever else, is it synergizes with Teferi. Some amount of the time when I have Teferi going, I just don't, because I'm a instant speed control deck, I just don't need to cast anything on my turn at sorcery speed. So the untapped 2 lands doesn't do very much for me. Sometimes I cast a mana rock or something, but activating Azcanta, then untapping the Azcanta to be able to use again later if I have the freedom to do that. Super, super strong. If I ever activate Azcanta twice in a turn, it feels like I'm crazy ahead. The front side of Azcanta has been errata to say Surveil 1. Okay, that's what I thought. There was a little while, so this is why I wasn't sure. There was a while where after they made Surveil, they were like, well, it's not going to be evergreen. The reason being that there were a few cards that cared specifically about surveils. It's when you surveil, look at an extra card, or whenever you surveil, you can I don't know, pay 1 to do something. And so they didn't want it to synergize with that, and it wasn't evergreen, but it's just one of those but it's so ubiquitous. Why not? It's the same thing. I guess they've changed it. That's what Puppybyte's telling me, and that does make sense. I think we might have talked about everything. That's actually really quick, all things considered. It's pretty surprising. It might be because so many of the cards do the same thing. But let's look at the tags just to make sure I haven't missed anything. We have a little bit of a, I don't know. Sometimes I want to put the acceleration separately from mana rocks because you don't do it the same way. That's why this is here. Oh, basic lands. These are pretty important actually. Um, Blood Moon isn't a thing I run into very frequently, but that these come in untapped and like islands contribute to Mystic Sanctuary, that you can find them with Fabled Passage, Prismatic Vista. It's important to have them. I only really have 2 swamps as opposed to 1 because there have been games where I want a Fabled Passage for a swamp, but then like I drew the only one in the deck and I can't get it, or like it got milled or something. So the only reason there are 2 is because is just so I can make sure there's 1 in the deck. Maybe I can do with 1 more planes, but notice the distribution also. It's like much more in blue than anything else. So here's our big draw spells. We have a few of those. The ideal play pattern, as I said, is play at a bunch of mana rocks and then play like a draw 5 off of Blue Sun Zenith or Pull from Tomorrow or something, which will get me going into more card advantage engines. Oh, I forgot to mention, Future Sight is the card that has synergy with Sensei's Dividing Top. Right, you can tap the top, draw a card, top goes on top, you pay 1 to cast the top with Future Sight. So it's pay 1, draw a card. Now, that might seem like a weird thing to want to do when you have Future Sight going, but, what if there's a counterspell on top of your deck? Well, maybe I want to hit a land drop, so I'll draw the counterspell and hope to find a land. Or because I'm not going to cast the counterspell right then. Or maybe I've already played a land and there's another land on top, whatever. If you cast any of your draw X cards for 4 X equals 1, then your net draw card carrier pigeon your net draw 1 card carrier pigeon is a 4-drop that draws a card and also gives you a 1. I think it's a better. Damn it, Puppybyte. Well, here's the thing. I never cast these where for 4 mana. By the way, X equals 1 for Pull from Tomorrow. That's 3 mana and also very bad. It's 3 mana, card negative. You draw a card, then discard a card, and you lose this thing. I have some amount of balance. It's nice to have, but it's not great. Here's the card selection that we have. Castle Vantress happens sometimes. It's pretty rare because it's kind of expensive, right? 5 mana, but it's more or less free. We have so many islands. It's pretty rare that this comes in tapped. It does happen though, and it is a risk that it could happen. The trade-off is also, this is another thing that Teferi can untap and you can do multiple times. I don't think I ever have, but you can. Here are my 13 counterspells. One of them also being removal. Oh, by the way, Dovin's Veto. Absolutely insane. I love this card. It's just like the final word in a counter war usually. Or, someone's trying to do something nuts. It's just, there's such a feeling of safety. There was a game I was playing recently, not with this deck, but another deck that had Dovin's Veto in it. And like one of my opponents was threatening Thassa's Oracle plus Demonic Consultation, and I just wasn't worried about it at all because, well, okay, I can Dovin's Veto the Consultation, and literally what can they do about it? If they had something like Narset's Reversal, they could do something about it. But I knew that they wouldn't have the mana for that, or they were also unlikely to have that kind of card in their deck. I think they had like Force of Will or something like that. I was like, well, that doesn't work. So that kind of safety is really, really nice. In fact, it's really funny because I had the answer, but as it turns out, I could kill them the turn before they were going to do it anyway, and I couldn't really kill anyone else. So I was like, all right, I guess I had you covered, but whatever, I'll get you dead. We have some amount of like defensive. I didn't know where to put this other than defense because sure, so is our counter magic, but this is explicitly only defense. Yeah, I don't know. I put Arcane Denial and card draw just to be cheeky. It does draw a card, I guess. This is more like the consistent card draw as opposed to, or like the small card draw as opposed to the big spells that are drawing me a million cards. And then you can see like all this fixing. I think I do need to cut Terramorphic Expanse. I think at this point, Magic has progressed enough where I can't really get away with it that much. I put Counter Magic in the defense cards in protection. I put Counter Magic and the defense cards in protection. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. The reason I put the Counter Magic separate is I just wanted to know how many counter spells I had in my deck. That's just one of those, like, if I put it with with this kind of stuff, then oh, it looks like I have more than I actually do. I have to pick them out. But only counter spells end up with the counter magic pile. Like I said, just 2 life gain cards. It's usually enough. Sometimes it isn't, but I don't want to put in some weird random mess of life gain effect. I could put in like blind obedience or whatever, but we don't really do that much with it, and it's, I don't know, it's just kind of dorky. Oh, okay, I do have Arcane Signet. Then why is it here in considering? Um, okay, I don't know what the hell is going on down there. I feel like there were some mistakes made. But yeah, we have some number of mana rocks, 11 of them apparently. Some of them are a little weird to count as mana rocks because like Gilded Lotus, you still need 5 mana. You should also you should absolutely be running Teferi if 3 fairy. Talking about Teferi Time Raveler. In my experience, he's just not that relevant in EDH. The card advantage he gets is only once every 4th turn. Teferi Time Raveler. No, he's insane in 60 card formats. But yeah, one white blue. Each opponent can only cast spells anytime they can cast a sorcery. So that can be nice, but I just frequently don't care, honestly, if people are casting spells on other people's turns. In some matchups, this is probably really good, but I tend not to play against people where I want this to be a thing. +1 until your next turn, you can cast sorceries as though they had flash. I guess that is nice in that it lets me wrath at instant speed. Where are our sweepers? I think they're down here. Sweepers. We have 9 sweepers. Oh, because I'm counting Mystical Tutor. But the thing is, like, Terminus, I don't really need to cast at instant speed. Cyclonic Rift already is an instant, so it's the remaining 6. That is nice, but it's only 6 sorceries. I mean, I could cast Torment at instant speed, but that just does not matter. And then the -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand, draw a card. This can be really good, and there's some stuff that I could pick up of my own that's really nice, like picking up Archaeomancer is sweet. I have a total of 8 sorceries, Puppybyte. I'll show you. I have 8 sorceries. 5 of them are wraths. 6 of them are wraths. Oh no, 7. Literally 7 of them are wraths. The only one that isn't is Torment. But Terminus is kind of not a sorcery, just because, it's 1 mana. While I do have to play it on my turn, because that's usually when I'm drawing my first card, it's only 1 mana when I do that. I have occasionally cast this for 6, and like, okay, that it would be nice to cast it there, but it's literally only like 7 cards, because casting Torment at instant speed is maximally irrelevant. So there is some stuff that this could be good. I just don't think it's that good, actually. I guess I should take a look at what stuff gets, like, picking up any of my 3 creatures with Teferi is great, sure. I don't think picking up any of my artifacts is good. I mean, we can reset Midnight Clock, but I don't think I want to do that. Yeah, picking up, there isn't a single artifact I want to reset. Sometimes I might want to reset an enchantment, but pretty rarely. The Torment is more relevant because you're now casting it can't be countered. Oh, I guess that's true. I do have to keep mana up frequently to make sure people don't interact. So I guess that's nice. I'll consider it, but I'm not sure that it's actually... I found, by the way to add stuff directly to different parts. I still don't think it's that good. It just doesn't do very much. It just doesn't do very much while he's in play. Like, there's not much on this card that I care about. I guess the, like, preventing your opponent from casting stuff at instant speed can be nice, and it's hard to know, like, how much advantage that will get you. But I don't care about his -3 very much. I don't care about his +1 very much. Like, it would feel a lot like playing Teferi the creature. So I'm not so sure. But I appreciate the suggestion for sure. And then, alright, let's go through the other stuff. Make sure I haven't missed anything. It's really quick. The Thoracle player can consultation with Thoracle on the stack. Sure, yeah, that's true. But I should think I have enough stuff to do about that kind of thing, just through my normal interaction, counter magic, whatever. Okay, so we have the mana rocks, a few cards with for no hand size. Wait, why is this here? Okay, I put the wrong tag on this. I don't know why this has no hand size. We have a couple of cards that do that. Sometimes we draw enough cards where our hand is going to be massive, especially if people aren't paying into Rhystic Study, or we've drawn a bunch of cards with Mind's Eye, and then we like, or I guess that's just another, or we maybe cast a massive Sphinx's Revelation for like 10 or something. So we need some amount of this. It just helps that the colorless land isn't that big a deal, and just having a mana rock is nice. So that's cool. The talismans, by the way, most of the time these tap for colorless because I would prefer not to pay life. It's just if I'm desperate. We have some amount of recursion. We talked about all this, and now it's clear why the Narset's reversal is recursion, because you can return some other spell you're casting to your hand to get that later. You kind of have to do it up front, as opposed to like Snapcaster Mage will like, oh, I'll get it back later. But you can also recur the Narset's reversal, is nice. Decent amount of spot removal. Drown in the Loch. Oh, this is so good. I don't know how often I actually kill a creature with this, but it's nice that I can. Same thing with Dam. I don't think I've ever cast Dam, but it's also very new to the deck, so I'm not really sure. But then all the rest of this is pretty obvious about how it's going. Maybe the Return to Dust should be Heliod's Intervention, just because it's actually an instant and can blow up more artifacts and enchantments. Like if you just pay 5 mana, you're getting 2 more. Right? It is 2 per, right? Oh no, it's destroy X, so you're just getting 1 more. Okay, it's gain twice X life. It also has the mode to gain life. Yeah. Sadly, I think Return to Dust is getting cut for Heliod's Intervention. I just got to pick up a copy. We talked about the sweepers. Here they all are, and why Mystical Tutor is considered a sweeper. What other tags does this have? Okay, card selection. Okay, sure. Couple of utility artifacts, few utility lands, and then we have our win cons. So I hope that was clear to you. That took way less time than I thought. Oh, I guess you can talk a little bit about the cards I'm considering. I don't know why there are so many. Wait, why did 3 of them go away? I used to have Solemn Simulacrum in the deck. It's kind of a holdover from when that was just a playable card. I don't know why I added 3 of them, so I'm just going to put it back in here. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's because it's in 3 places. It didn't add 3 of them. It's just sorted by tag. Forgot about that. I know what I'm doing. Okay, it didn't add 3 of them. It just... oh my. Okay. It's kind of a holdover for when EDH was a lot slower and you can get away with this. It replaces itself and gets a land, which is really nice. I just don't think I have the room for it anymore. Like I had to make a cut, and I just don't think it's probably the time for this card being good enough is gone. It's sad, but it's gone. This is actually in the deck. I don't know why this is still here. I used to have a copy of Leyline of the Void in the deck. This was mostly because I played with an opponent who played the Gitrog monster, and it was either go after his lands or go after his graveyard as a solution to that problem. And I would prefer to not go after someone's lands. It started as Rest in Peace, but I use my graveyard too much, so I had Leyline of the Void. But I don't play with that player very much, and I just don't need this against a huge number of opponents. It's kind of a blank, and again, I needed a cut. So this could come in the future again, but not necessarily. There has to be a better source of recursion than the Snapcaster spell. Mission Briefing, maybe. It's only 2 mana though, and it gives you card selection, which is nice. Also, unlike Torrential Gearhulk, unlike Torrential Gearhulk, you can cast sorceries with it. You just have to do it on your turn. Same thing with Snapcaster. And like Archaeomancer is 4 mana. Like it's just think of it as another Snapcaster. I don't care about the 2/1. The 2/1 is probably less relevant than the Surveil 2. If anything, the Mission Briefing is better. The only thing that Snapcaster does better is it doesn't cost double blue. I actually like Mission Briefing a lot. And then this is a card from Doctor Who that I've been considering. It's probably free to just put in the deck, and I don't know how often it'll work, but maybe sometimes it was. It's Trenzalore Clock Tower. Tap, add a. It's a legendary land, but legendary doesn't matter. Tap, add a blue, put a time counter on it. So you don't have to do anything to get the time counters. You're just making mana with it every turn. And if you didn't need it for mana on turn, you can just tap it to put a counter on it anyway, right? It's not a big deal. It's not like you have to pay into this, which is nice. Unlike the Midnight Clock, though, it doesn't happen automatically on each upkeep. This is basically once per turn cycle. I guess twice if I untap it with Teferi, which is kind of nice. So it takes longer than the Midnight Clock, but that can also be a good thing. It also only happens when we want it to, because it doesn't automatically do something when it has 12 time counters. Instead, it's 1 in a blue, tap, remove 12 time counters from it, and exile it. Shuffle your graveyard and hand into your library, then draw 7 cards. Activate only if you control a Time Lord. Never mind. Card's terrible. I didn't realize that last line of text. If it didn't have that last line of text, I think it would make it in the deck. But nope, that card's just bad. So we're not playing that one. So this is my control deck. Like I said, it's just don't do stuff. If you don't need to do stuff, don't do stuff. The only thing you really need to do is accelerate your mana, make sure you don't die, occasionally sweep up the board, and there you go. And I guess that's all I really have to say about that. Now, Puppybyte, now that you're here, one of the things I was mentioning was that, one, if you like, I can put the, I can add, in, I can put a pinned post of, here are the rules for the Puppybyte set-singleton challenge. And then the other thing is, since we're still pretty early in the stream, I did make my own. And it is 100 cards. I think some of the decision-making needs to be changed. But I do have it. So why don't I go over this as well, since we have the time. So this will be a twofer. We'll do 2 deck techs. Something that has to come with this is, oh god, the document. It's not quite filled out. I still haven't added what's actually in the deck and what's not. Just whether it's added to Mox Field. But it was very helpful, by the way. Thank you, Puppybyte, for the idea as well. To lay out, okay, here are the good cards from this set. Here's what I'm actually going with. One thing that was kind of neat to me was, noting which sets have islands and which don't. I had to, kind of in the middle of the deck building process, not like I interrupted the deck building process to do this, but so much as about halfway through the process of doing this, I had to start pretty aggressively adding in basic lands. So I put this in the Discord as well. I even figured out a search on Scryfall that will search for cards in the set of a given color that aren't reprints, but will include islands, or will include basic lands. So this is also in the Discord, and if I do make, and I think if it's cool with you, Puppybyte, I want to put the rule set for this challenge in there, and I'll have that with that. But ID of what color, format is the commander. It's either not a reprint or it is a basic, and then you just put in whatever set it is. Some of the set names were kind of annoying to deal with, by the way. I actually updated. I copied this from Puppybyte's spreadsheet, but some of the names had to be changed actually. So Innistrad Crimson Vow, it's not Innistrad Crimson Vow Commander, it's just Crimson Vow Commander. So I tried to have it match the way Scryfall finds it. But here we are. We have mono blue constraints. I'll draft you a guideline for it. I think I know most of the rules, but yeah, we can figure it out. So the commander I went with, just to make my life easy, this is the first decision I made, so I knew the least about what I was going to have access to, but it also helps me pare down what stuff is important, instead of just looking for the best card. Maybe there's a better card, but it doesn't synergize as well. So I did pick this first, which is why it's the most generic and the most open. 4 and a blue, 3/3, Magecraft. I always think it has flying. I don't know why it doesn't have flying. Maybe it's because it looks like the creature is floating. I don't know. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is that spell's mana value. 3 and a blue, target creature token can't be blocked this turn. So, obviously, we're just trying to cast instants and sorceries. I could go through like a card by card thing, but there's going to be a lot of difficulties there. So instead, I'm just going to go through the deck list and show you what's here. Um, Invasion of Arcavios. Actually, this was an insanely hard pick. From this set... Okay, I'm going to rearrange my tabs here because the order is currently confusing me. From this set... There were so many good cards for us. Chrome Host Seed Shark, another payoff for casting instant sorceries. Invasion of Arcavios, I'll get to that in a second. Invasion of Segovia, it gives your non-creature spells Convoke, which could be really useful, especially because we're making fractal tokens. I can have us cast C Double, a thing that copies spells. That's really good for us. I went with the Invasion, though I think that's probably the best one, but it's hard to say. 3 blue, battle, 7 defense counters. When it enters the battlefield, search your library, graveyard, and or outside the game for an instant or sorcery card you own, reveal it, put it in your hand, and if you search your library this way, shuffle it. Flipping it is going to be a little tough, but the backside is an enchantment that says when you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. By the way, remember, Magecraft is when you cast or copy, so this will also give us another fractal with our commander. We are pretty reliant on the commander, and getting the mana for her is a little tough, just because we only have so much in the way that we can of mana rocks we can actually play. But we'll get there. Creatures, not a lot of them, as you might imagine. There was one that I was really interested in, but ended up having to cut, which is Gale. Where's my considering? Yeah, there's a lot of cards. Every card that is on this list, that's on this column, that isn't in the deck, got moved to considering. I'm pretty sure I didn't remove any of them. Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy, was a creature I was considering for a while. It's whenever you cast an instant sorcery from your hand, you can cast a card of the other type from your graveyard. So if you cast an instant from your hand, you can cast a sorcery from your graveyard. It's really, really good. You have to exile the other card. That's not that big a deal. It's really, really good, but maintaining the balance of instants and sorceries, especially that did what I want them to do and all these other constraints, it became too difficult, so I ended up cutting him. Then there are a couple other things in here you can see I was thinking about, but ended up not making the list. The creatures that are here do a couple of things. Brawl, mana reduction, and also whenever you counter a spell, you get a loot. There's a lot of counter spells in this deck, as you might imagine. Docent of Perfection, another payoff for instants and sorceries. I just want to play with this card. It's so funny. 3 blue, 5/4 flying. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. It's a Delver of Secrets. It makes a Delver of Secrets. And I say that because it also says, then if you control 3 or more wizards, transform Docent of Perfection, who becomes a 6/5. It says wizards you control get +2/+1 in flying. So the 1/1 tokens you're making become 3/2 flyers. It's literally Salvager, or Delver of Secrets, rather. And when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, make a 1/1 blue human wizard token. So again, it makes the Delver of Secrets, but as long as you have this, it's already flipped. So that's pretty neat. Another payoff for instant sorceries. Hercule, Master Wizard. I think this will be good, but there are other... If this ends up not being good, I think there are other cards from the set. They're really good. Yeah, Arcane Prophecy, Philology. Yeah, there's some good stuff in here. Flow of Knowledge. 1 blue, 2/4. At the beginning of your end step, if you cast a non-creature spell this turn, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. For each card type among non-creature spells you've cast this turn, you may put a card of that type from among the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Most of our spells are instants. There are 25 of them. That's fewer than I thought. But still, there's a lot of those, so we can get those. There are also a decent number of artifacts. We can get those. Should help with card advantage. Poppet Stitcher, another awesome card for this style of deck. 2 and a blue, 2/3. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, make a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. So you don't just get a 2/2; it has Decayed. But at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more creature tokens, does not care about what kind of creature tokens, just creature tokens at all, so our fractals count, you can transform him. The backside is an artifact that says creature tokens you control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 3/3. So the decayed zombies no longer decayed, and they're bigger. But also our fractals are 0/0s, and they already don't have abilities. So this basically gives all of our fractals +3/+3. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you can transform this back. You know, if the idea was like if the Poppet Stitcher makes the tokens, Then the Pop It Factory buffs them, but if those tokens die, you're not making any more because you don't have the Pop It Stitcher, so you flip it back to start making them again. That's the idea, but I don't imagine we'll be flipping this back. And then Snapcaster Mage, just good recursion. Cool. Some sorceries. We do have a few of those. We have a couple of sweepers. We have Curse of the Swine, X blue blue sorcery, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller puts a 2/2 green boar creature token onto the battlefield. So unconditional exile removal that you can do en masse. That's pretty cool. It's just a lot of mana, but also the more mana we pay into it, the bigger the fractal we get. So that's neat. We have Raise the Palisade. This one seems kind of cute, actually. 4 and a blue sorcery. Choose a creature type. Return all creatures that aren't of the chosen type to its owner's hand. We just choose fractal. Sure, we have to bounce Deekah, but that's not a big deal. This clears the way for all of our fractals to get through. What other fractals would there be? We also have Spectral Deluge, 4 blue blue sorcery, Foretell for 1 blue blue. So this is actually cheaper to cast off of Foretell, which is not usually the case, but there's a reason for that, and that's because of how the card works. It's return each creature your opponent's control, so never bounces our stuff, with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So we do not need to have more islands than our opponents have toughness on their creatures. So casting it early isn't that big a deal, but that we can foretell it and then cast it later when it's advantageous is pretty nice. I was actually just realizing, I forget what set Vidalcan Shackles is from, but I think I didn't even consider that card, and that works very well for how many islands we have in the deck. It's from Darksteel. What did I play from Darksteel? How did I just completely miss that? Darksteel. Oh, we just have Skullclamp here? Alright, well. Can I spell? Yes. Okay, cool. So as you can tell, like, this is the kind of thing, like, it's you always think you're done, and like, nope, it's not actually. We also have a couple of draw spells. We have Lorien Revealed. Most of the time it's a land, right? We can island cycle it for 1, but sometimes we'll cast it for 5 to draw 3 and make a 5/5. That's pretty cool. Concentrate, 2 blue blue sorcery, draw 3 cards. This is the predecessor to Harmonize. Harmonize is green Concentrate, just literally color shifted. So just having some amount of card draw is really important. I actually don't even think I have enough. I ended up cutting a lot of it because of how they worked, but I might need more, actually. Compulsive Research, 2 and a blue, sorcery. Target player draws 3 cards, then discards 2 unless they discard a land. Cool. We also have a little bit of card event. I'm so excited for this card in specific. Advice from the Fae. 3 instances of 2 or a blue. So you can cast this for 6 colorless if you want, but we're mono blue, so we can just cast it for 3. But its mana value is still 6, so we make a 6/6 fractal when we cast this, even though we're paying 3, which is really nice. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. If you control more creatures than any other player, put 2 of those in your hand. Otherwise, put 1 of them in your hand and put the rest in the bottom in any order. It's just card selection if you don't have the most creatures, which we might not. This might end up not being a 2-for-1 a lot of the time. But it is, a 1-for-1 that gets us card selection and a 6/6. So that's cool. This might be kind of bad, but I'm excited for it. We also have Quantum Misalignment. We have we have a couple of ways of copying our commander. I don't have as many as I could, because like before she's in play, these cards don't really do anything, and they are kind of expensive. And most of the other ones are not instants of sorceries. But this is 4 and a blue sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it isn't legendary. So that's also important. Not all copy effects do that. It also has Rebound, which lets, if you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. Which means, if things are going to plan, we can play Deekah, Quantum Misalignment, make a 5/5, make a Deekah. Next turn, play another, rebound the misalignment, get 2 more 5/5s and a Deekah. That's pretty good. High upside, but obviously things have to be going well. And then Rise from the Tides is the last sorcery. It's just a payoff for all of our instants and sorceries. 5 and a blue sorcery, so it comes with the 6/6. That's neat. Put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, tapped for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Important. The fact that they're tapped does mean you have to remember, this doesn't save you. This doesn't protect you. The turn you cast it, you're not making blockers. You're making blockers for a subsequent turn or attackers, more likely. But we do have a lot of instant sorceries. Between the two, we have 34 in the deck. That's more than a third. I actually kind of wish I had some more, so maybe that's another thing I can reappraise, but it's hard to find balance when you're simultaneously very limited on like what card could even become an instant or sorcery. In the instance, first we have a card that I misread and was super excited about, then got less excited about when I reread it, and that's Abjure. I thought this was an enchantment, and if it were an enchantment, it'd be turbo broken, mega busted in this deck. Blue, it is an instant. Well, it says interrupt, but if it were sacrifice a blue permanent, counter target spell. That ability, I was like, oh, this is an enchantment, and I didn't really like read the type line very well. I was like, oh, there's a T, it's an enchantment. If there's an enchantment, this card would be unbeatable in this deck because we just have all these fractals. These are blue permanents, but no, it's blue instant. As an additional cost to cast a sacrifice a blue permanent, counter target spell. It's a cheap counterspell, and like we should have some amount of fodder if we're casting spells with Deekah around. That's actually one of the problems. I want more spells that I can just randomly cast. Things like preordain and stuff. Not specifically preordain, but things that I'm okay with casting when there's nothing going on. We have counter magic, we have arcane denial, we have archmage's charm, we have counterspell, cryptic command, fierce guardianship, mana drain, mystic confluence, Narset's reversal, negate, rewind, saw it coming. Saw it coming might be better as behold the multiverse. I really don't know. I'm on the fence on that one. Split decision is kind of a counterspell. We'll come back to that. Wizard's retort, since Deekah's a wizard, this works for us. Sublime Epiphany. Hey, Pigeon. I'm showing off my my card from Tempest. Oh, I'll get to that. Split Decision, by the way, really funny in this deck. 1 and a blue instant. Will of the Council. Choose target instant or sorcery spell. Starting with you. Okay, so it's not even a negate. It's counter an instant or sorcery. It can only target an instant or sorcery spell. Starting with you, each person votes for denial or duplication. If denial gets more votes, counter the spell. If duplication gets more votes, or the vote is tied, copy the spell, and you get new targets with the copy. Well, that's the cool thing. Copying the spell triggers Deekah. So if we find the right instance of sorceries to target, it'll be a really tough decision. As far as PG Keen's asking, what's my card from Tempest? What is my card from Tempest? Sapphire Medallion. From Torment. Deep Analysis, I think is, yeah. I'm not playing it though. May I suggest retracted image? Retraced image? What the hell is this? I was gonna say, how did I miss this? But then I remembered that that I was skipping over a lot of the non-instants and sorceries because, you know, they're gonna be. Oh, this is a sorcery. What the hell? Okay, sorcery. Reveal a card from your hand, then put that card on the battlefield as the same name as a permanent. Oh no, this is so bad. No, absolutely not. You're just minus a card to get to accelerate 1 land. Oh no, that can't be good, right? I don't think that's real. Certainly, if I was going to play that or Deep Analysis, I'd rather play Deep Analysis, which you can see I didn't have room for, though I kind of want to put back in. All right, what else do we have in here? We have some sweepers. We have Cyclonic Rift. We have Dig Through Time for card advantage. Also, Dig Through Time. We're not paying 8, but we're getting an 8/8. This is the best blue ramp spell. That might be true, but it's not a good one. We got Mission Briefing, by the way. Casting. This is 2 spells into Deekah, so that's neat. Perilous Research is a card I'm super excited about. This card is terrible normally, but it's so good in this deck. 1 and a blue, instant, draw 2 cards, then sacrifice a permanent. Well, here's the thing. Deekah makes us a random 2/2 when we cast this. We don't care about sacrificing the permanent. We'll just sack the 2/2 as the worst, as in the worst case, which makes this with Deekah in play just 2 mana, draw 2, and you don't really have to worry about the drawback. You just give up your 2/2, or better if you have like a 1/1 instead, like you might get from something like Pongify. We also have some removal. Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, Reality Shift. Those are Arboreal Grazer, Mox Diamond, Exploration. But we also have Polymorphous Rush, a card I'm excited about. It's probably terrible, especially because we can pay more mana into it. It basically has multi-kicker. we can pay more mana into it, but it doesn't actually increase the mana value. So we might cast this for 7, but still only get a 3/3. Still very, very strong. I think it's a very synergistic card for us. 2 and a blue, Strive. It costs 1 and a blue more to cast for each target beyond the first. Choose a creature on the battlefield. Any number of target creatures you control become copies of that creature. Never mind. This card's terrible. I didn't realize it said you control. I thought I could turn my opponent's creatures into these 0/0 fractals. Oh, that's sad. Oh, why do they gotta do me like this? So that was from Journey into Nyx. What is Pull from the Deep? As you can see, this is never done. Return it 1 instant and 1 sorcery from your graveyard to your hand, and exile this. For now, I'm just gonna take out the Polymorphous Rush, and I'll look at my considering when we're done, knowing that we have to put in another card. That sucks. Very sad about that. We also have Sublime Epiphany here. The one thing it doesn't do is copy an instant or sorcery, which is something I'd like. Well, okay, Peachy Keen. Those cards aren't always losing cards for mana. First of all, Exploration is in green, where you can get a lot of lands, and like you have access to stuff like Life from the Loan. But also, Arboreal Grazer, you're not down a card. You have a 0/3. That's not a good card, but that is a thing. It can be, but I don't know, because if Retraced Image got it from my deck, well, it'd be Rampant Growth, right? That'd be more appealing, but it's not like I don't know. I guess it is kind of like Mox Diamond in that way, but Mox Diamond accelerates his turn. I don't know. Sublime Epiphany doesn't copy a spell, which would be nice, but otherwise it's cool. It costs 6, so we get a 6/6 out of it, and whatever. We have a little bit more card draw, Thirst for Discovery. 2 and a blue, instant, draw 3, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a basic land card. I was worried that I wasn't going to have enough basics. As it turns out, that should not have been a concern for me. There are a lot of basics that we have access to. In fact, I even got to cut a couple of basics from sets that I have access to. Okay, Puppybyte sent me a draft of the guidelines. We'll do that eventually. Probably after stream. Alright, bye, Puppybyte. Thanks for watching. And then we have Twidcast. It's like the only spell that copies, but weirdly, it was actually kind of hard to find instants and sorceries that copied instants and sorceries in blue. Most of those are red, as it turns out. So we have Twidcast, and that's about it. Artifacts, some amount of it is just mana acceleration. We have Wayfarer's Bauble, Star Compass, Spell Satchel, which is a cute one for sure. 2 mana artifacts, Magecraft. When you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, put a book counter on it. Tap, remove a book counter from it, add a colorless. So it doesn't make mana until you cast an instant or sorcery. That does suck. But after that, it should make mana pretty consistently. And it has 3 tap, remove 3 book counters from it, draw a card. So eventually it can draw us cards if we need it to. We have Planar Atlas, enters tapped, taps for colorless. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Or you may look at the top 4 cards of your library. If you do, reveal up to 1 land card from among them, put it on top, and the rest on the bottom in a random order. So we can ensure a land drop sometimes. It's okay. It taps for colorless, and it does something else sometimes. There's Obsidian Obelisk. Enters tapped, taps for colorless, and it adds a mana of any color, but only to cast a multicolor spell. So we're never doing that. And when I'm willing to play this, Planar Atlas seems a lot better. We have Fellwar Stone, which is kind of funny because this makes mana based on opponent's lands, and it's pretty unlikely they'll have mana of my color. But if this is just an Obsidian Obelisk that comes in untapped, it's still better than Obsidian Obelisk. Everflowing Chalice. This is sometimes 2 mana rock. This is sometimes 6 mana mana rock. Depends. And we do need acceleration. Machine God's Effigy is another mana rock. It 4 mana and it taps for a blue. So it's pretty inefficient, but you can have it enter the battlefield. It's a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact, and it has tap for a blue and isn't a creature. So you can also copy our commander with this, and in a way where we're not going to get, it's not going to get swept up by a wrath. So that's the only other commander duplication I have, if I remember right. We also have bigger mana artifacts, Scepter of Eternal Glory. A few of these cards are likely to be in every build of this challenge build, especially if you play monocolor, which at the moment is what we're doing. I guess we don't have to, but If you are playing monocolor, Scepter of Eternal Glory and Throne of Eldraine have to be, are very likely to be always the card from their respective sets. Because this is 4 mana artifact, taps for mana of any color, or it taps for 3 mana of any one color, but only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. Well, basics have the same name. We're monocolor. We're going to have a lot of basics. So cool, this taps for 3. This is a Gilded Lotus that costs 1 less. Neat. Throne of Eldraine is similar. It's 5 mana artifact. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Tap, add 4 mana of the chosen color, but you can only spend this mana to cast monocolor spells of that color. This is a little bit more restrictive because we can't use it to cast our artifacts, and we do have a decent number of them. We have, 17? It's the most prevalent non-land card type after instants. But it also has 3 tap, draw 2 cards, and spend only mana of the chosen color to activate this ability, so that's pretty cool. It's frequently a 5 mana rock that taps for 4 of your color. Pretty good. There's also some cost reduction. Sapphire Medallion, a card that this cycle I expect to be always the card from Tempest, but maybe not. We also have Primal Amulet. Instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Cool. We do that a lot. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, put a charge counter on it. Then if there are 4 more charge counters on it, you can remove those counters and transform it. The backside is a land that taps for a mana of any color. And when that mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell, and you can choose new targets for the copy. That's pretty great. Copies also trigger Magecraft, so both sides of this are really nice. You do actually get less mana out of it once it flips, because Primal Amulet is, well, I guess if you're casting at least 1 spell a turn, then if you're casting exactly 1 spell a turn, you're getting more mana. You're getting the same mana from both sides. If you're casting 2 or more instants or sorceries, Primal Amulet gives you more mana than Primal Wellspring. Though I suppose if you're casting 0 instants or sorceries, the Wellspring does make more mana because you can use it for mana rocks or whatever. We have Mind Splice Apparatus, 3 and a blue, artifact with flash. At the beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on it, and instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on it. That's great. It's a little awkward the turn you play it, but you get to cast it on an opponent's end step, so you don't have to commit to it on your turn. And then it progressively makes your spells cheaper and cheaper. Great. And we have 3 mana doublers. We have Extraplanar Lens, a classic of monocolor decks. 3 mana artifact. Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you remove target land you control from the game. Whenever a land with the same name as the imprinted card is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana to their mana pool of any type that land produced. What's funny is this is frequently put alongside snow-covered lands so that opponents are less likely to get a benefit from it, because if you put snow-covered island under this and I tap my island, it's a different name, but we only get access to 1 snow-covered island in this format, so if someone's playing the same color, they get this Extraplanar Lens effect. We also have Gauntlet of Power, 5 mana artifact. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1. Whenever a basic land is tapped for mana of the chosen color, its controller adds 1 mana of that color to their mana pool. So this is symmetrical, but they have to be the exact color that we are. And then Cage Sun is the exact same as Gauntlet of Power, except it costs 1 more and it's not symmetrical. This is only for you. Cool. So that's what's going on in the artifacts. We have a few enchantments. I'm a little on the fence about Swarm Intelligence. It's just it's such a powerful effect. 6 and a blue enchantment, so it's crazy expensive. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. You couldn't ask for a better payoff for casting instant sorceries. That said, I think we do need more of them. I didn't realize we only have 34. It's actually not a lot for what this deck is. We'll find space. Metallurgic Summonings. 3 blue. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, make an XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X is the spell's converted mana cost. It's basically the same as Deekah. It is a little bit different in that, Raise the Palisade, you got to pick between Fractal and Construct, I guess. But that's kind of edge case. It's just more of this kind of effect. It also has 3 blue, exile Metallurgic Summonings, return all instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only if you control 6 or more artifacts. Pretty unlikely to happen, but maybe it will. And, having that is kind of nice. Inexorable Tide is a card I'm super excited about. 3 blue enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. Our fractals aren't XXs like Metallurgic Summoning tokens. They're 0/0s with X/1/1 counters. So each spell we cast, in addition to making us a fractal, also makes our fractals bigger. And we can stack the triggers to make sure that we always get the fractal comes in first, and then the proliferate happens. So that's pretty awesome. We don't have a lot of enchantments because, again, we want as many instant sorceries as we can manage. Maybe we need to cut a random artifact or two to put in more instants and sorceries. I can see cutting something like Obsidian Obelisk or Gauntlet of Power or something. But the problem is we need mana, and the most cuttable cards out of here are the mana rocks. Oh, I forgot to mention the Ozolith. This is possibly cuttable, but I'd want to see how it works out first. It seems really interesting. 1 mana legendary artifact. When a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. Remember, our fractals have counters on them. So if they just die, or if we sack it to like perilous research or whatever else, like if something happens to our fractals, which I imagine they will, the counters hang out on the Ozolith. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all of those counters onto target creature. So it lets us. It basically means that our fractals dying doesn't make us lose power. It only shifts where that power is, and like delays it sometimes. So I want to try this out. This is possibly cuttable. It seems like the least reliable of our artifacts as far as being good, but it's just so hard to find a cut here to put in more instants and sorceries. But we do need to do that. The easiest cuts, weirdly, are in the instants and sorceries themselves, but I do need to cut them. Maybe Hercule can come out for another instant or sorcery. He's the most likely to be bad, considering we just don't have that many of the same type. That's probably what I should do. Our basics. One of the things that's cool, I don't know if you can do this on other deck building sites, but on Moxfield, you can split your basics. And so one of the things I did was I made sure every card was the correct set that I'm playing it from. So that's why all these arts are different. I also tried to make sure that I didn't use the same art twice, even if the art got a reprint. So all of these basics, yes, are from different sets. Made sure to have that. I think we have one more basic in the considering pile is like the best card from that set was still a basic land, and we don't need that many. We have 39 lands in the deck total. Maybe 40 would be nice. I don't know. We have 39 at the moment. We do need to hit our land drops pretty consistently. Now, some amount of that is like, well, we should be drawing cards. So maybe I can cut one land for something like Preordain or Portent or something. We have an Ice Age land. We can cut the Ice Age land for Brainstorm. But something I'll think about more off stream. I don't think this deck is done so much as it's in a point where I can show it off a bit. We have Coral Atoll. It was a silly. I don't know if this card's good, but I wanted to try it out. Also, Visions had no good cards from it, if I remember right. So that made it easy. There aren't any basics in Visions. Yeah. Oh, I guess there were some options because like Desertion is not bad, but it's expensive. So I don't know. But this is land enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you may return. Oh, it's been reworded. It's like, oh no, I think it is true. When it enters the battlefield, return an untapped island you control to its owner's hand or sacrifice it. And it taps for 1 and a colorless. So you don't accelerate with this. And in fact, it's kind of like you have to cast it because it has to be an untapped island. So you can't use that island for mana, and this comes in tapped. So the turn you play it, it sucks. It's kind of like a double tap land. But it's kind of like this land lets you hit 2 land drops. Because this taps for 2. Obviously one of it's colorless, but that's not a big deal. And and you still have your land to replay next turn. So if you go Island on turn 1, Coral Atoll on turn 2, you've only had 1 mana you can spend so far. But then on turn 3, you play your island, and these 2 lands are like you had 3 lands. That's the value. That's the value of this. We'll see if it works out. And I think it's mostly basics. There are a few exceptions. Mystic Sanctuary seemed amazing in this deck. We have millions of islands. We have instants and sorceries. Putting it on top isn't as good as in another deck that doesn't have these constraints because we are less consistently able to redraw that in a reasonable time, but usually we can. Myriad Landscape helps us accelerate. This is also a card that I expect to frequently be the card picked out of its set. We have Temple of the False God. We're going to hit land drop. This is not a fast format. We have time for this. And the colorless doesn't matter. We have so many basics. Otawara, nicey little utility. Taps for a blue. Channel, 3 and a blue. Discard it. Return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. And this ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. We don't have that many creatures, but I think almost all of them are legendary. Okay, 2 of them are legendary plus our commander. So, usually it'll be 4, sometimes 3. but still having a bounce from a land is kind of nice. And Terrain Generator, a card I was actually really excited about when we were discussing this challenge because I missed this card, and this is probably a format that can support it. Plus, in monocolor, it gets a lot better. Taps. It's a land, taps for colorless, but you can also pay 2 and tap it to put a basic land from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. This is mana acceleration. It comes from your hand, but it just costs you a land drop as opposed to a card like the one PG Keen was suggesting. And it can be repeatedly done as if you have the mana to sink on it. It is more expensive than the other one, but still. Oh, why is this in sideboard? Should be in considering. So that's where we are right now. I've done some test draws. I don't know if it's the shuffler on Moxfield because I keep getting mana screwed in my 39 land deck. But it does feel like I need more instants and sorceries. Sometimes that just like, some bread and butter type cards. Things that are like, scry 2 draw a card. Or, I'll just scry period in. Quick study might even be good enough in this deck. A lot of the problem is sometimes those cards are next to other cards that are way better. I think Quick Study, for example, is Wilds of Eldraine. Oh, it's not even in here. Oh, but that has Farsight Ritual, which I think is much better in our deck. It's not currently in there. Farsight Ritual, 2 blue, bargain. We can basically bargain for free. We can't use the token from Deekah that we get for casting Farsight Ritual to bargain it. We do have to get something before, but even still, it's look at the top 4 cards of your library, or if it was bargain, look at the top 8 cards, put 2 in your hand and the rest in the bottom. So like that's probably better than something like Quick Study. It's 1 more mana, which gets us a bigger token, but also in exchange we get more selection. So here are the cards that I'm not playing that I was thinking about. Willbender is just because Legions is a set with all creatures, so I wasn't gonna find an instant or sorcery, and this is, I guess, a reasonable creature, and I miss playing with that card. Wonder was like, I can make all my fractals fly. The problem is I can't get this card in the graveyard very reliably, so I decided against it. Oh, what was my card from Amonkhet? Because we can play Pull from tomorrow. I just realized. Amonkhet. Oh, I guess we could just play a Pull from tomorrow. That should probably be here instead of Hyrule. Okay, well we'll fix that. We'll come back to that. As I say, we're not really done so much as this is where I am at the moment. Bribery was a card I would have liked to have, but it's kind of expensive. Like, we have so many things at 5 mana, and it's the only thing that does something like this. So it's not like we do a lot of sealing from our opponents. And I just needed cuts, and sorceries are easier to cut than instants. That's part of why Deep Analysis is here. I'd rather have Farsight Ritual than Deep Analysis, even though the flashback on Deep Analysis makes it better card advantage. Sorcery is a big problem. Flawless Forgery, I go back and forth on this one. 3 blue, casualty 3. So we can't use the token from casting this to pay its casualty cost. We have to have a 3 power thing to sacrifice already. Also, if we sacrifice Deekah, we don't get a token, so that doesn't work either. But the effect is very strong, and it's 5 mana, and it's a sorcery. That's why it's over here in considering. But exile target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. Copy that card. You may cast that copy without paying its mana cost. And we could get 2 of them, which is we get the Flawless Forgery trigger for casting the original spell, plus the casualty spell, plus the opponent's instant or sorcery, plus the second one. We get 4 tokens out of the deal. The problem is our opponents need to have good instants and sorceries in their graveyard. We need to have a 3 power creature, and we have to have the freedom to cast this 5 mana sorcery. So that's why I keep going back and forth on it. Inundate, I hoped would be good enough, but we have a lot of sweepers already, and this was the clunkiest. 3 blue, return all non-blue creatures to their owner's hands. So that's pretty cool. We get to keep all of our stuff. Our opponents should keep almost none of theirs, if anything. Polymorph, again, this was really cool, but there was enough stuff that I didn't want to polymorph into, like Snapcaster. I guess there's only Snapcaster. But it's a 4 mana sorcery. I couldn't justify it. Reality Strobe, the fact that it keeps recasting itself is really cool, but it's pretty anemic as a card. I can't justify having a card slot on it. Uncovered Clues could be good, but I think the 4 mana, I think the instant speed versions of this are going to be better. Same thing with Vivisection. Additional cost to cast it, sack a creature, draw 3 cards. We can't sack the thing we make for casting it, but we can sack a previous thing, and we should have that fodder. But 4 mana, draw 3. We already have that in Concentrate. I'd rather have like 4 mana instant, get 2 cards with selection, or like Fact or Fiction. A Little Chat was similar. Maybe a Little Chat should go back in since we just caught a card actually. It is the kind of bread and butter card I was thinking of, and we can sack a token. Now that I put it in the deck, I guess I should go back up here to talk about it. You can sack a token, so you get 2/2/2s instead of whatever the thing is you sacrificed. Most of our tokens are probably going to be bigger than 1/1, so it's not like we're turning a 1/1 into 2/2/2s. More likely we're turning like a 2/2 or a 3/3 into 2/2/2s and this spell, but this is also just like a fine spell to cast. Something that I'm happy to spend my mana on when nothing else is happening. Actually, that might even be worse than one of the other options in here, which is Glimpse of Freedom. 1 and a blue, draw a card, but as escape for 2 and a blue and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. So we can cast this a bunch of times. I don't know. It's kind of close between this and a Little Chat. A Little Chat gives a selection and 2 spells up front. But if we can't pay its casualty, or we don't want to, Glimpse of Freedom is only a little bit worse as far as the card selection, and we can keep recasting this from our graveyard. I don't think we use our graveyard except for Snapcaster Mage. Let me double check. I guess technically Invasion of Arcavios. No, I think that can go because it can get from outside the game. I think it can get reach into exile. Snapcaster Mage cares about the graveyard. And Rise from the Tides cares about it. Okay, never mind. We can't play Glimpse of Freedom. Like, we have a payoff that cares about how many things are hanging out in our graveyard. There was another card I saw that cared about how many cards are in your instants and sorceries are in your graveyard or in exile. That was pretty interesting. I think we ended up not playing it though. Big sad on Polymorphous Rush. I just didn't reread it, and I'm glad I did here. Quicken, by the way, I was really considering this one because it does let us it lets us cast some of those clunky sorceries at times where they're more reasonable. Like, I don't want to tap out on my turn for Concentrate, but I will happily pay an extra one. Oh, I'm saying I'd happily pay an extra one to cast it at instant speed. But then I realized I don't have Jace's Ingenuity in here because I didn't want to pay 5 for that. So I guess maybe that's not the case anyway. All right. Loose Focus is soft counters like this are usually not very good in Commander, right? 1 and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, and has Replicate for a blue. But the thing is, the Replicate makes us a 2/2. So I was like, maybe it's good. I don't know, back and forth on that. Same thing with Memory Lapse. Vanishment, I was pretty excited about because I'm like, if we miracle this, we get a 5 mana spell for 1. Problem is, if we don't miracle this, we have to pay 5 for it. The card isn't that valuable to cast at anyway. We don't have ways of setting up the miracle. We're not playing Brainstorm at the moment. And we do have a decent amount of removal even without it, so it's fine. Traumatic Visions felt to me a lot like Lorien Revealed, but we have so many 5s, I just had to cut it. And if 2 mana basic land cycling, like, I'd rather just play an island. I think I did cut this for land number 39, actually. Thoughtscour, we just don't use our graveyard very much. We have Rise from the Tides, but if we don't draw that, the only thing that cares is Snapcaster Mage. I guess if we put in Glimpse of Freedom, this would be better, but it just says draw card. I'd rather have Brainstorm, which currently not playing. I think currently the card from Ice Age is basic land. So Void Shatter, another counterspell. I don't like the 3 mana counterspells, but listless 1 exiles. I think Dissipate was another card I was considering. Don't have Mox Diamond End at the moment. Same with Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp might be good. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. It's bad. I just couldn't justify too many 4 mana rocks. Synthesis Pod, though, was really interesting to me, and I was very torn. I'm still very torn on it. I think it's bad, but I was uncertain. So it's 3 in a Phyrexian blue for an artifact. It's basically the cost some Birthing Pod. It's for 1 in a Phyrexian blue, tap, exile a spell you control. Target opponent reveals cards on top of their library until they reveal card with mana value equal to 1 plus that spell's mana value. Exile that card, then they shuffle, and you can cast that card for free. So you do have to like transform your spell that's on the stack, and you get an opponent's thing, so it's unreliable. But you do cast multiple spells. I guess it's not even necessarily hitting an instant sorcery, and it's from their deck, so it might not synergize. Yeah, all right. I'm pretty sure it's bad. Oh, the enchantments. I wanted to play all of these, and I just needed to make cuts. Maybe Rhystic Study can go back in just to get us the cards, but I think I'm better off with instants and sorceries that do that, because they synergize better. Military Intelligence. I just couldn't. I'm just not sure how good this would end up being. 1 to blue enchantment. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. I think we can do that a decent amount with the fractals, but in my playtesting on Moxfield, it takes a while to get going. It's not super likely this happens, actually. Some random lands we didn't play. I think I do want to make some cuts in like maybe the artifact department. Like maybe cut like one artifact. Maybe it even has to be. Well, maybe it would be the Ozolith. Maybe it has to be one of these mana rocks. Uh, Maybe cut a creature, which would be Hercule. Maybe cut a land and then put in 3 more card advantage cards or like card selection cards like Brainstorm, and I'd really like something like 2 or 3 mana instant, and it like has the potential to get this multiple. I guess Behold the Multiverse might be better than Saw It Coming for that reason. I do have, by the way, tags on this so we can see what the breakdown is. Oh, this is untagged at the moment because it was the most recent edition. The basics are untagged, but yeah, here's our acceleration, whatever. So our big mana, our board buffs, our board wipes. I was actually looking at more proliferate stuff, by the way, than just the Inexorable Tide. I was like, maybe I can play these random spells that are like draw a card, proliferate. It was just like Tezzeret's Gambit was a card I was considering instead of Cage Sun. It was just a matter of like, but it's still a sorcery, and like if we don't have that many fractals, it's not that big a deal that I'm proliferating. At least with the Inexorable Tide, like it's so consistent. I don't have to find the spot where it's good. I can try to just get it into play, and eventually I'll have fractals. I don't know. Maybe it's not good for that reason because it's only good when things are working. But if things aren't working, we're losing anyway. I don't know. We have our 3 board wipes. That's why I didn't feel we needed the inundate. I didn't feel we need the inundate. Some amount of card advantage. I put spell satchel here because we can do that, but like we have a decent amount of it. It's just a lot of it needs the game to have been played already is the problem I'm having. Advice from the Fae: we only get 2 cards if you have the most creatures, which means probably not doing that any sort of soon. Archmage's Charm, it's just a draw 2, but sometimes a counterspell. Like this is fine. Like I don't have any problems with this. Compulsive Research, that's the kind of card I'm looking for. I wish it were an instant. That's why Thirst for Discovery is better, but gets us some card advantage. Sure, Concentrate, but like Cryptic Command, we're not using that to draw cards. Dig Through Time, we need to delve a bunch of cards. Lorien Reveal costs 5, so the game needs to be on a bit. Mystic Confluence is more reactive. Perilous Research, we kind of need a token. Spell Satchel needs us to have been casting a bunch of cards. This is what I mean. Like a lot of these cards just need the game to have been played a lot already. So yeah, I do want to add a couple more like random instants to cast to just like do random stuff. Ideally, like maybe even think twice as good. It's just a matter of I'd like it to be cheap, but have a way where we can get more out of it later. So like this is why I like a little chat and Free From Reality. That's what it was called, right? Or Glimpse of Freedom. Glimpse of Freedom. That's the card, not Free From Reality. Is that they're both like they're cheap. You're not super happy with just casting it, but it's fine. And then later in the game, they do more. Like Little Chat can be 2 cards with selection and additional bodies. Glimpse of Freedom can be recast to get more cards. This is kind of why I lean towards those. Like I said, there's not a lot of copying stuff. Narset's Reversal, by the way, the copy triggers Deekah. That's pretty cool. So Narset's Reversal is 2 spells, and we don't have to pay the full mana value for the other one. Not that much cost reduction. That's why it makes me like apprehensive to cut something like Mind Splice apparatus. It's just like, well, we don't have a lot of that, and this does it in a very powerful way. I don't know. Maybe we have too many counterspells. Maybe we don't need like this Sublime Epiphany. Maybe we don't need this Fierce Guardianship. Um, I know Fierce Guardianship is insanely strong, but it's also one of the more expensive cards in the deck, and like maybe we don't need that many. I'm gonna put some of these in there and just. But this is what I mean of like, look, the easiest place to cut or the instance. Maybe we just play these 12 counters. I actually don't hate that number. It's very close to how many Dakkon has. Dakkon has 13. Play these, maybe one more, and then replace what we just cut with random card advantage, like stuff to do type spells. There's our Mana Rocks. There's our just random miscellaneous. Like, I don't know where else to put Ozolith. We have our recursion, our removal. Notice we don't have that many spell payoffs. One of the concerns I had, and I see this a lot, especially in Cube, is that there are so many cards that reward you for casting instants and sorceries that sometimes you're like, sometimes you end up playing too many of those and you don't have enough of those instants and sorceries. I'll put Hergold in the sideboard into considering. And then, yeah, that'll be the thing I try to do. I'll do this off stream of like try to add in a few more cards that are just fine to do. Part of the problem with the 4-mana ones also is that there are too many 4-mana ones. I want to do stuff sometimes earlier than that. 2 or 3 mana would be nice. Maybe Rhystic Study comes back in for that reason. But again, I'd rather have instant sorceries. Frantic Search was being considered for that reason, but I also don't have stuff to do with the mana if I'm casting it early. So it's actually not that good to play earlier in the game. Hieroglyphic Illumination, as a note, the cycling on this is very frequently the thing that makes it palatable when it does get played, but the cycling doesn't do anything for us. It's not casting the spell. So it's basically like we just need to get rid of this card for something more useful. And if that's where we are, I'd rather have a card that's better at digging us out of that than a spell that like sometimes you just don't want and sometimes is a clunky draw spell. I don't think we can put Dramatic Visions in. Maybe we can put Loose Focus. I don't know. There's a lot of counter magic. Yeah, as it turns out, there are a lot of good blue cards. I mean, we can even play something like like just so much mana. I really wish there was something a little cheaper. But that's where we are. Puppybyte said he just sent me a draft for the rules on this. I guess I can make this public now, even though it's not done. I just made a bunch of changes. But hopefully you find this interesting as well. This challenge. If you do, well, I encourage you to try it out. Play with your friends. One of the things I like about EDH, and some people find this weird, and I know the CEDH players definitely don't look at it this way and would definitely disagree with me, is that it is an accessible format that is designed to be casual to some amount, right? You're building around a legendary creature and you have color restraints. You're not making your deck just as strong as possible. You're trying, like, you have these limitations you're imposing on yourself. It's 100 cards, it's singleton, all this other stuff. This is part of why I don't like the CEDH tendency of play 2 partner commanders that are completely different colors because you just want to play as many colors as you want. You don't really care about the commander. You're just like, you're trying to remove the restriction imposed by the format. I like the casual nature of this kind of stuff. I like that you get to play with cards that you don't normally, and you get to see them do cool things that are strong and stuff. And so this set singleton format does allow a bit of messing around with that. A little like, okay, we're going to play a much lower power format and have some fun with it. This is why, by the way, I've frequently liked common and uncommon cubes a lot more than I've liked more powerful ones. Because when the power level of the cards is lower, you have to work a lot harder. You have to, be a better player to compensate for that. And I like that aspect of the game. I like trying to be a good pilot. So that's where we are. We actually were really quick with these deck techs. Previously, they've taken a lot longer. We went through 2, and they took about an hour each. By the way, when I post the rules for this set singleton challenge, I will also put up a copyable spreadsheet that looks a lot like this that can help you with it. This way, you don't have to find all the things yourself. You can just copy the spreadsheet, make a new one of your own, and start modifying. This has been exceptionally helpful, and it also helps break up the work that goes into it. You're not trying to find, what should my deck be and then figure out how to make it fit the constraints. Instead, it's just, all right, let's look at unlimited. What cards are good from that set? By the way, it's I put unlimited here because um, there are no cards because Alpha Beta Unlimited Revised um, don't have any new cards from one to the next. But there are some cards in Alpha Beta Unlimited that aren't in Revised. So Unlimited is the cheaper one, but also like this is the one that has all of the cards, and it's the newest of them. It doesn't really matter between Alpha Beta Unlimited. And in fact, you can just play a revised version of the card. Most of the cards you're going to want to play are going to be in Revised anyway. But yeah, you can like break this up and just be like, all right, next we go to Judgment, next we go to Dissension, whatever. And you can kind of make the card choices one by one. One of the difficulties that this approach has that I'm finding though is that when you say like, okay, I just want to put in more instants and sorceries, it does become a little bit hard to be like, what sets even had good instants and sorceries that I didn't want to play? My Considering sure has a bunch of those, but it doesn't have Brainstorm in it because Brainstorm wasn't the card I chose from that set. And so you kind of have to like dig through here. There is a drawback, there's no perfect way of doing this, but this hopefully is helpful. I found it very helpful. And it's very funny to me what cards aren't that good, which cards are. High Tide in a mono blue deck, probably actually not that good. I really wanted to play Apprentice Wizard, by the way, or City of Shadows. Let me find those cards. I just couldn't justify playing them instead of Fellwar Stone. Apprentice Wizard, excuse me. Show me the beautiful one. Thank you. 1 blue, 0/1. Creature, human wizard, blue tap, add triple colorless. So this is a mana rock-ish. You make 2 mana by using it, but it's colorless, so like that's a little difficult. I don't think it's an enormous deal, but it's a 3 mana creature, so as opposed to like a 2 mana artifact that just taps for 1 right away. Maybe because Fellwar Stone always taps for colorless. No, because I don't know. I really wanted to play this card, and then the other card that I was like, ooh, this is actually kind of spicy. But unfortunately, it requires things to be going well already. Is City of Shadows. This card is garbage. This is such a one of the worst lands ever made for sure. One of the worst cards ever made. But it almost was actually good in this deck. So it's a land, does not have just tap for colorless on it. Can't just like tap it right away for mana. It says tap, exile a creature you control, put a storage counter on City of Shadows. Tap, add a colorless for each storage counter on it. So you have to like spend a bunch of turns eating your creatures, but then it starts to make lots and lots of mana. My thought was like, well, we have these fractals, especially for casting a lot of cantrips. We'll just have these random idiot creatures we don't care about laying around. The problem is this doesn't make mana until we start doing that, which means before we can cast our commander, we don't have anything to do with this. Then after, we have to start exiling some of these things, some of the tokens we're getting from casting our spells before it can even start to make mana. So it just takes too long. If this tapped for a colorless, just by itself, I might still play it, honestly. Not over Fellwar Stone is the problem, but I was really excited to play that, and I just didn't. And it's just kind of surprising what cards you think you're going to end up playing and you don't. And what sets have a lot of good stuff. It felt a lot like drafting sometimes, where you'll have a pack with nothing, or like, with only one good card, or a pack with nothing going on in it, and then you'll get a pack with like 5 good cards. And then you play Island. Like, it's so weird. There are so many good cards from Rise of the Eldrazi, but I needed basic lands, and the only one that I wanted to play that was an instant sorcery is a conditional counterspell. So we played an Island. There is a lot of sets, actually, where there's nothing to pick. A lot of these commander sets don't have that many new cards. In fact, one of them, I forget which, one of them only had one non-reprint blue card in it. and it was some creature that wasn't good for us. So we played island, and some of them, the commander sets often don't have unique basics. They just use the basics from their associated retail set. That's why we have none for a lot of these. The funniest one was Alara Reborn, for sure. I hadn't thought about it when I was getting there, so I went to search Alara Reborn and was very confused when no cards came up. And I was like, did I do something wrong? Did I type the name of the set wrong? No, I forgot. It's an entirely multicolor set. There are going to be no cards that I can play. That's why we have the little... Because I forgot, and once I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, all right, that's pretty hilarious. So, I hope you all had fun with this. I do want to do deck text for the rest of my decks, just to get them out of the way so I can reference them in the future. We'll get there when we get there. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to do that like every week until we're done. Seeing as though it takes about an hour to do, though, and not a full stream length, I think when I do them, the next time we'll do 2 at once. I'm glad I had a second one to go over, but I expected it to take a lot longer because some of the previous ones did take a while, or like at the very least Mail took a while. But I think that was because I was approaching it in a worse way. So that all being said, my throat's getting a little dry, so I want to drink a bunch of water and not make you listen to the bubbles of the water as I do it. So I hope you had fun with this. Hope you found it interesting. Again, if you're interested in Puppybyte's set-singleton challenge, I will put that as a pinned message in the Magic section of the Discord. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Actually, before I forget, don't forget, tomorrow is These Are the Questions Day. We'll be back with more of that. Hexic knows we're doing it. We should be all good to go, and we'll do that some more. And that'll be fun. So again, thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you next time. Bye.